Throughout history, the relationship between war and wealth has remained one of humanity's most troubling constants. And, while soldiers march toward uncertain fates, private ledgers fill with profits that never face public scrutiny. Yet, behind the global tragedy of warfare lies a shadow economy, where certain families silently amass fortunes. Behind marble-columned mansions and philanthropic foundations often lies the seed money of wartime contracts. Today, we unveil the true history of how many great fortunes lie buried in wartime procurement records, diplomatic cables, and banking transactions that span continents, in a shadow archive of how blood transforms into dynasty. When thinking of American old money dynasties, you may know families like the Rockefellers, the Kennedys, and the Vanderbilts, storied names that have adorned the country's cultural and political fabric. Yet, lurking behind these more publicized dynasties is the saga of the DuPont family, a lineage that arguably eclipses them all in wealth and influence. Now, the DuPonts first burst onto the American scene in the early 1800s as French immigrants with a keen eye for the untapped promise of a burgeoning nation. While most stories of this era feature settlers striving for basic survival, from the beginning, the DuPonts aimed higher, a gunpowder empire set in their sights. And that's just the opening act. As the 19th and 20th centuries rolled in, so too did the DuPonts' levels of immense power and prestige. Indeed, the family delved into arenas far beyond gunpowder, chemicals, materials, science, and even armaments. But what happens when a family steeped on the brink of becoming old money has to learn how to navigate scandals, market crashes, and the unyielding march of technological progress? In today's episode of Old Money Luxury, we'll explain that and more as we describe in sordid detail how the DuPont family went from new money to old money. Our saga commences in 1739 Paris, where Pierre Samuel DuPont emerges, a figure molded from humble origins yet infused with unrelenting ambition. You see, the mid-18th century in Paris was rife with socio-economic contradictions, with the opulence of the aristocracy clashing with the impoverishment of the lower classes, and all against a backdrop of intellectual enlightenment and cultural awakening. Despite the austerity shadowing his early years, Pierre Samuel's educational aspirations flourished, nurtured by parents who recognized and fervently nurtured his intellectual propensities. Certainly from youth, his intellectual curiosity was insatiable, perhaps fueled by an internal drive to transcend his modest upbringing, or possibly an innate quest to fathom the intricacies of human society. Without a doubt, this early brilliance was particularly noticeable in areas like economics and philosophy, disciplines that would later anchor the DuPont family's monumental rise. Now, Pierre Samuel soon entered the intellectual crucible of the Collège de France, a hub of progressive thought. There he immersed himself in the advanced theories of his time, methodically sculpting a formidable foundation in economics and philosophy. And after years of studious investment, his academic endeavors bore fruit. His seminal writings, specifically those exploring the complex interplay between economic structures and human behavior, became revolutionary texts in academic circles. And these works didn't merely garnish applause, they sparked fervent debates among scholars and thinkers alike. Furthermore, his scholarly achievements did more than win him academic acclaim. They propelled him into the corridors of political influence. His essays and treatises earned him advisory roles to key figures within the French governance, including ministers and perhaps even members of the royal court. Once there, his insights shaped not only intellectual dialogues, but also influenced practical policy-making, making him a distinguished luminary of his time. But as history evolved, so did France's political backdrop. The cataclysmic onset of the French Revolution in 1789 plunged the nation into a vortex of volatility. And while initially an advocate of revolutionary ideals, Pierre Samuel's faith waned as the movement spiraled into zealous excesses. When he found himself incarcerated by the revolutionaries in 1797, the writing was on the wall. France, once a sanctuary, had turned treacherous. Confronted with this stark reality, Pierre and thus the DuPont family undertook a momentous decision that would recast their fate. They selected the United States as their sanctuary in 1799. Strategically speaking, this choice wasn't driven by mere desperation, but by a calculated vision. They perceived America as a cradle of untapped potential, a refuge where political perils could not shackle their ambitions. Thus they set sail for a land draped in the promise of renewal. Yet the DuPont's journey to America was not without blemishes of suspicion. Rumors circulated about their political alignments back in France. Some speculated that Pierre Samuel secretly sympathized with radical Jacobins, notorious for leading the Reign of Terror. However, a scrutiny of historical accounts dispels these doubts. In fact, Pierre Samuel DuPont was a figure of nuanced ideologies. He neither espoused Jacobin ruthlessness nor condoned monarchical rigidity. He navigated a path in alignment with his principles, rejecting both extremities in a life that was anything but ordinary. Now, the early 1800s United States that the DuPonts planted their flag in was a youthful nation on the cusp of industrial emergence. Pierre Samuel DuPont, then a French expatriate teeming with unyielding resolve, had decided within just 3 years of setting foot on American soil to establish a venture. The history books thus marked the 19th of July in the year 1802 as a momentous date that would herald in the inception of E.I. DuPont de Nemours and Company. Furthermore, the socio-economic conditions of the era were propitious for DuPont's entrepreneurial leap into gunpowder manufacturing. America's westward expansion, coupled with escalating geopolitical tensions, made the domestic production of the family's future cash cow product, gunpowder, not merely viable but indispensable. Moreover, the US market was primarily reliant on British imports, revealing a gap that begged to be filled. Even today, we can envision a gunpowder mill in Wilmington, Delaware, a daring endeavor in a landscape where the complexities of gunpowder manufacture loomed large. At the time, the British had firmly established themselves as the reigning giants of this volatile trade. Nevertheless, Pierre Samuel DuPont remained unwavering in his quest for a competitive stronghold. His audacity to challenge established industrial might displayed his acumen for business and an intrinsic understanding of market dynamics. And in carving out this niche, DuPont not only offered a domestic alternative but also seized a chance to contribute to America's burgeoning self-reliance, aligning his own destiny with that of a nation in ascendance. Now, Pierre's recipe for success extended beyond mere ambition into the realm of astute strategy. His chosen location by the Brandywine River was meticulously planned, with the river offering the dual advantage of powering the mill and facilitating an efficient distribution network for his gunpowder products. Further complementing this was Pierre Samuel's relentless focus on quality. He imported seasoned professionals from France, ensuring that the company's operations were steered by expertise. Cutting-edge machinery became a signature feature of the mill, setting it apart from competitors. However, the journey was not devoid of setbacks. The War of 1812 temporarily bolstered demand, but the post-war landscape was less forgiving, forcing the company to diversify into realms like black dye and sulfuric acid. By the 1830s, the focus sharply shifted. DuPont pivoted his operations toward manufacturing black powder for leisure and sporting activities, a high-stakes bet that yielded significant dividends, and the company soon emerged as the foremost supplier of black powder within the United States. But the ingenuity didn't halt there. In 1834, DuPont broadened his portfolio, entering the textile industry with a new mill on the Brandywine River, purposed for cotton yarn production. This strategic move resonated with the rapid growth of America's textile sector and catapulted DuPont into a significant market role in cotton yarn. Yet this part of the story is punctuated with ethical quandaries. The 1840s saw DuPont becoming enmeshed in the American slave economy, as slave labor was used in its cotton mills, and its gunpowder ended up in the arsenal of slaveholders. Thus, a dichotomy of moral stances existed within the company. Pierre Samuel DuPont was an ardent opponent of slavery, whereas others like Éleuthère Irénée DuPont were slaveholders themselves. However, questionable ethics notwithstanding, in the coming decades the DuPont lineage set forth their next major chess move, one that would catapult them into the echelons of America's most powerful and affluent families. Now, the American Civil War offered a critical juncture. The Union Army was in dire need of gunpowder. Recognizing the opportunity, the DuPonts secured profitable contracts, becoming an indispensable supplier in the war machinery. Indeed, the family didn't merely capitalize on this moment, they revolutionized it. With remarkable alacrity, the DuPonts expanded their production capabilities to satiate the burgeoning demand. By the cessation of hostilities, they had ascended to become the globe's preeminent gunpowder manufacturer. Their coffers swelled, marking their transition from wealthy entrepreneurs to American financial aristocracy. Yet, this ascent was not without its dark clouds. As the 19th century waned, the DuPonts diversified their influence beyond mere commerce, crafting a multi-pronged strategy to permeate political spheres. For instance, one notable milestone was the marriage of Eleuthère Irénée DuPont and Alice Belin in 1890. Alice, daughter of an esteemed Delaware politician, functioned as a conduit, providing the DuPonts a direct line to Delaware's political sanctums. However, the family's tendrils extended well beyond state lines. Henry Algernon DuPont, another scion of the family, took on a significant diplomatic role as the U.S. minister to Italy from 1893 to 1897. These strategic affiliations and prestigious appointments were the cornerstones that anchored the DuPont family's political sway. But luminosity often draws shadows, and the DuPonts were no exception. As they reveled in the financial windfall accrued during the Civil War, they faced allegations of war profiteering. Critics claimed that the family had exploited the Union's desperation, levying exorbitant prices for their gunpowder supplies. But the DuPonts countered, asserting that their pricing was equitable, driven by the enormous demand rather than opportunistic greed. Nonetheless, these claims left an unforgettable mark, prompting public skepticism and demanding increased transparency in their enterprise. But overall, in navigating eras of war, prosperity, and controversy, the DuPont family emerged not just as commercial magnates, but as multifaceted puppeteers, wielding considerable authority in both corporate boardrooms and political chambers. As the calendar pages flipped into the 20th century, the DuPont family's fortunes and dilemmas would evolve in parallel, with a seesaw-style existence of highs and lows that no one could have predicted. Now, the outbreak of World War I offered the DuPont family yet another stage for their mastery in explosives and gunpowder. Aligning with the Allied forces, they furnished indispensable war supplies, from explosives to other key materials. For the DuPonts, this was more than a commercial endeavor. It was a manifestation of patriotic zeal. Beyond supplying war materials, the family deployed their considerable wealth to ignite a flame of nationalism. For example, they underwrote war bonds and spearheaded patriotic events that invigorated the American spirit. Subsequently, their dual role of fortifying national defense and amassing immense profits was undeniable. With the government willing to pay a premium for quality war supplies, the DuPont coffers burgeoned. And in the Great Depression, an epoch marked by widespread financial devastation, the DuPont family demonstrated financial acumen and resilience, while many enterprises faltered. Specifically, their secret weapon was a canny investment in General Motors, or GM. Initiated in the 1920s, they had accumulated a dominant stake in GM by the decade's end. And despite the economic cataclysm that slashed sales in GM, the DuPonts remained unflinchingly committed to their investment. With strategic cash injections and managerial acumen, they buoyed GM during the Depression's bleakest hours. Their steadfast support wasn't merely optimistic. It was a well-considered gamble that ultimately yielded lavish dividends. As the American economy painstakingly resurrected itself, the fortunes of General Motors rebounded, and the value of DuPont's stake soared correspondingly. However, the latter part of the 1930s and the early 40s presented the DuPonts with judicial hurdles that challenged the very foundations of their empire. Accusations of breaching antitrust regulations, specifically in their gunpowder and chemical enterprises, loomed large. In response, the family countered vigorously, arguing that their operations were simply competitive strategies in a cutthroat market. But the federal government had its own agenda. In 1941, legal proceedings commenced against DuPont, unfolding in a protracted battle that would last years. Eventually, the government's unrelenting legal efforts culminated in the disassembly of the DuPont corporate structure into 3 distinct units, leaving questions open to whether the DuPont name could last into the modern era. Next, in the incipient years of the 1960s, the DuPont family found themselves at the vortex of an environmental maelstrom. The ecological fallout of their chemical operations was becoming increasingly hard to ignore, with air and water pollution linked to alarming health outcomes, including cancer. And initial attempts to dismiss these burgeoning concerns soon proved untenable. In 1962, a watershed moment materialized as the family established a specialized environmental protection division, funneling substantial resources into eco-friendly technologies. To align their internal ameliorations with public perception, the DuPonts launched an expansive public relations offensive. Through meticulous ad campaigns and strategic sponsorships, they sought to project an image of corporate responsibility, keen to demonstrate their bona fide commitment to environmental safeguarding. By 1981, the DuPont clan orchestrated a masterstroke that echoed through business corridors, a successful acquisition of Conoco, a leading energy firm. Indeed, this strategic maneuver marked a seminal chapter in their diversification agenda and solidified their footprint in the flourishing energy sector. The melding of Conoco into the family's industrial empire provided an appreciable boost to their earnings and extended their global reach. Looking at the contemporary landscape, the DuPont lineage continues to be a paragon of influence, with tentacles spread across sectors like business, philanthropy, and governance. Yet, the family's journey has been punctuated with episodes of disquietude. In the early 21st century, the DuPonts encountered a renewed wave of scrutiny, this time focused on the health implications of Teflon, their iconic non-stick substance utilized in cookware. Scientific investigations revealed unsettling connections between Teflon and various health disorders, casting aspersions on the family's legacy. Initially defiant, the DuPonts eventually bowed to the weight of evidence, acknowledging Teflon's potential health hazards. In 2005, a costly denouement unfolded as the family consented to a sizable settlement. $16.5 million dispensed to laborers exposed to Teflon toxicity. This was coupled with pledges to recalibrate manufacturing protocols to minimize Teflon emissions. While these upheavals cast a pall over their prestige and dented Teflon sales, the DuPont family's sustained influence remains indelible. Their capacity to navigate treacherous waters, whether environmental, financial, or ethical, cements their status as one of America's most important old money families. Thus, from their initial footprints in France to their groundbreaking enterprises on American soil, the family's contributions span a broad swath of domains: chemical innovations, strategic acquisitions, environmental stewardship, and even governance and philanthropy. Each generation of DuPonts has imbued new facets to an already multifaceted legacy, renewing and refreshing the family's imprint on myriad sectors. Their story stands as a paradigmatic example, illustrating that even in the face of formidable challenges, resilience and ingenuity can carve a path to enduring relevance and influence. Money, they say, makes the world go round, but in the hands of August Belmont, it made America dance to his tune. You see, when this brilliant young German Jewish banker arrived in New York in 1837, he carried with him the backing of Europe's mighty Rothschild family and an almost supernatural talent for turning chaos into profit. What followed was one of the most spectacular rises to power in American history, as Belmont transformed himself from immigrant outsider to puppet master of the Democratic Party, the political heart of the Confederacy, on the eve of the Civil War. Next, through brilliant calculation and ruthless ambition, August Belmont Sr. would build a dynasty that shaped American destiny from the shadows, playing both sides of every conflict while emerging stronger from each crisis. Therefore, in today's episode of Old Money Luxury, we share with you the story of how one family's machinations helped spark a civil war, reshape American politics, and build an empire that would influence everything from our first subway systems to our most prestigious horse races. Although all of us likely have skeletons in the closet, so to speak, when it comes to our family background, it's unlikely that our lineage can lay claim to such a controversial legacy as being some of the puppet masters who helped pull America's strings straight into civil war. Meet the Belmonts, the family that turned America's bloodiest conflict into their personal chess match. You see, they had their start way back in the year 1837, when a plucky 24-year-old German Jewish immigrant named August Belmont Sr., our protagonist and family patriarch, entered New York City with something better than a dream. He had the Rothschild family's backing, Think of him as the 19th century's version of a tech startup founder, except instead of a garage, he had Europe's most powerful banking dynasty in his pocket. Within months, his August Belmont and Company was making Wall Street dance to its tune, and our young hero and villain was climbing social ladders faster than a firefighter at a burning mansion. But August wasn't content with mere financial domination. No, this ambitious newcomer had his sights set on something far more intoxicating: political power. By the 1850s, he'd masterfully wormed his way into the Democratic Party's inner sanctum, starting with a calculated friendship with Louisiana Senator John Slidell, who, ironically, would later become one of the Confederacy's most notorious figures. By 1860, Belmont had achieved what few Americans, let alone immigrants, could dream of. He'd become chairman of the Democratic National Committee at a time when the Democratic Party was more aligned with the pro-slavery Confederates than the anti-slavery Republicans were. And goodness, did August Belmont Sr. revolutionize his role as DNC chairman. Gone were the days of genteel handshakes and polite dinner parties. Belmont transformed political fundraising into an art form that would make modern super PACs blush. But here's where it gets deliciously devious. When the Civil War erupted, our friend August performed a political pirouette that would make Machiavelli proud. Initially an opponent of President Abraham Lincoln, Mr. Belmont swiftly rebranded himself as a Union man once the bullets started flying. Yet somehow he managed to keep his Southern Confederacy business interests intact through his Democratic Vigilant Association. Talk about playing both sides of the Mason-Dixon line. His European connections proved particularly useful in discouraging foreign powers from backing the Confederacy, though those pesky Confederate bonds still managed to find their way to London and Paris. One might almost think he was hedging his bets. Indeed, by his death in 1890, Belmont had amassed a fortune of $10 million US. That's about $280 million in today's money. Additionally, he'd established America's most prestigious horse race as his namesake. You know the one, the Belmont Stakes, and fundamentally altered the nature of American political machinery. Furthermore, the legacy was carried forward by his son, August Belmont Jr., who turned his father's strategic genius into an empire of iron and horses. While Senior had mastered the art of moving money, Junior mastered moving people, quite literally, by financing New York City's first subway line and the Cape Cod Canal. When he wasn't revolutionizing transportation, he was revolutionizing sport as the first president of the Jockey Club and chairman of the New York State Racing Commission. And let's not forget Alva Belmont, better known to history as Alva Vanderbilt, who married into this fascinating family and proceeded to shake America's foundations in her own delightfully disruptive way. After trading her Vanderbilt marriage for a Belmont one, she transformed her Newport mansion into a fortress of feminist revolution, bankrolling the suffrage movement's most militant wing, even including African-American women and immigrants, in a movement that, at the time, too often excluded them. But to fully grasp how this audacious immigrant banking family managed to reshape a nation's destiny, from its railways to its voting rights, we must travel back to a smoky office in Frankfurt, where a young banker received an offer he couldn't refuse. The Belmont family legacy began in the ancient Jewish community of Alzey, a town nestled in Rhenish Hesse, where for generations the Schönbergs, their name meaning beautiful mountain in German, had lived and prospered. Here, in this provincial German town, the foundations were laid for what would become one of the most influential dynasties in American finance and politics. Joseph Jessel, the earliest known patriarch of the line, wielded considerable influence as the leader of Alzey's Jewish district in the year 1700, setting a precedent for the family's future role in positions of authority. Into this lineage, on the 8th of December, 1813, came August Belmont, born to Simon Belmont, the respected secretary of Alzey's synagogue, and Frederica Elsass Belmont. The boy's early years were marked by loss. His mother's death when he was just 7 forced young August to relocate to Frankfurt am Main, where destiny would intertwine his path with that of Europe's most formidable banking dynasty, the Rothschilds. In Frankfurt, August attended the Philanthropin, a revolutionary educational institution founded by Meyer Amschel Rothschild himself. But it was not merely academic connections that bound the young Belmont to the Rothschild empire. Through an intricate web of family marriages, his grandmother's late second husband's half-sister had married Amschel Meyer Rothschild. August found himself drawn into the Rothschilds' orbit at the tender age of 14, when financial hardship forced his father to end his formal education. The young man's initiation into banking began ignominiously enough, sweeping floors, polishing furniture, running errands through Frankfurt's narrow streets. Yet even in these humble tasks, Belmont displayed an almost fierce determination, studying English and French in whatever spare moments he could find, mastering the intricacies of accounting with an intensity that caught his employer's attention. By 19, he had risen to confidential clerk, and by 20, he was traveling across Europe as a private secretary, his footsteps echoing through the marble halls of banks in Naples, Paris, and Rome. Then came 1837, and with it, the assignment that would transform August Belmont from a talented protégé into an American financial titan. The Rothschilds, concerned about their investments in the Spanish Empire, dispatched the 23-year-old Belmont to Cuba. But when his ship docked in New York that May, he found a city in the grip of financial panic. Banks were collapsing, fortunes evaporating, and in the midst of this chaos, the Rothschilds' American agent had failed with staggering losses of $7 million, well over $200 million today. In that moment, Belmont made the decision that would define his future. Instead of continuing to Cuba, he established August Belmont and Company at 78 Wall Street, using his strategic acumen to navigate the turbulent waters of American finance. His gamble paid off spectacularly. He not only salvaged the Rothschilds' interests, but positioned himself as their official American representative. At 24, August Belmont had already demonstrated the ruthless intelligence and bold decision-making that would characterize his career. But as he sat in his Wall Street office in 1837, surveying the bustling financial district below, he could not have known that banking was merely the first act in his American journey. The corridors of political power beckoned, and August Belmont would soon answer their call. Within a mere 3 years, the young German immigrant August Belmont had amassed a personal fortune of $100,000, equivalent to nearly $3 million in modern currency, establishing himself as one of the 3 most significant private bankers in the United States. But it was in the realm of politics where Belmont would truly reshape American history. His entry into the political arena came through John Slidell, a shrewd Louisiana Democrat who recognized in Belmont something beyond mere wealth. He saw a man whose European connections and financial acumen could reshape the Democratic Party's fortunes. Like a master chess player positioning his pieces, Belmont began moving through Democratic circles, his influence growing with each calculated step. The 1850s marked Belmont's emergence as a political force. His role in James Buchanan's presidential campaigns of 1852 and 1856 demonstrated not just his willingness to provide financial backing, but his keen understanding of political strategy. By 1860, when he arrived at the Democratic National Convention, Belmont had become more than just a wealthy donor. He had become a political operator of the highest order, leading New York's delegation in support of Stephen Douglas. His political ascendancy reached its apex when Douglas himself insisted on Belmont's elevation to the Democratic National Committee, where he was immediately installed as chairman. But it was the Civil War that revealed the true complexity of Belmont's character. Initially advocating for compromise and peaceful separation, believing in the possibility of early reconstruction, Belmont's position underwent a dramatic transformation after the attack on Fort Sumter in April 1861. With characteristic decisiveness, he emerged as one of the Union's most ardent supporters, wielding his considerable influence in ways both public and private. He raised and equipped Union Army regiments, particularly among German-American communities, personally presenting battle flags to Colonel Blenker's German 1st New York Rifles. More significantly, he deployed his international banking connections like weapons, working tirelessly to discourage European financiers from providing credit to the Confederacy. His diplomatic efforts extended to personal tours of Europe, where he lobbied British and French leaders to maintain neutrality. Yet even as he supported the Union cause, Belmont's political maneuvering revealed a man walking a complex tightrope. He continued leading a deeply divided Democratic Party, balancing between war Democrats and peace Democrats. In 1862, he organized the Democratic Vigilant Association, promising Southern rights even as he funded Northern armies. By 1864, this tension reached its peak when he backed George B. McClellan's presidential campaign, which paradoxically combined a pro-war candidate with an anti-war platform. As the war drew to a close, Belmont remained at the helm of the Democratic Party, his chairmanship extending into the tumultuous Reconstruction era. But the political battles of the post-war years would test even this seasoned operator's skills, as he faced the challenge of rebuilding not just his party, but his vision for America's future. What came next would determine whether August Belmont's influence would survive in a nation transformed by blood and fire. The high society transformation of August Belmont into American aristocrat began in the summer of 1849 at the fashionable resort town of Saratoga Springs. There, destiny arranged a meeting between the 33-year-old financier and Caroline Slidell Perry, a delicate beauty of 20 whose presence was so ethereal that society dubbed her Tiny. But there was nothing diminutive about the impact this union would have on American society. For Caroline was no ordinary debutante. She was the daughter of Commodore Matthew Calbraith Perry, future opener of Japan, and niece of War of 1812 hero Commodore Oliver Hazard Perry. Their courtship moved with the swift certainty of a summer storm, the sophisticated European banker and the young American aristocrat finding in each other something that transcended their vastly different backgrounds. On the 7th of November, 1849, they married in an episcopal ceremony, a choice that marked Belmont's quiet departure from his Jewish heritage, though he never formally converted. The wedding was proclaimed the most fashionable event of the year, a union that bridged the worlds of new money and old American prestige. The Belmonts set about creating a lifestyle that would define Gilded Age excess. Their New York residence at 109 Fifth Avenue, purchased for $90,000 and expanded through the acquisition of neighboring property for $130,000, became a monument to their ambition. The mansion featured a conservatory and private art gallery that doubled as one of the city's few private ballrooms, its rooms echoing with the sound of masquerades, elegant dinners, and private performances that drew New York's elite into their orbit. In Newport, Rhode Island, they constructed By the Sea, a 14-acre estate that would help establish that town's reputation as America's premier summer colony. The Italianate mansion with its French mansard roof became the stage for Caroline's ascent to Queen of Society, a position she would hold for 15 years. There, she introduced 10-course French-style dinners served by a staff of 26, while her demi-dormant carriage created sensations on Newport streets. Her exquisite jewels and impeccable taste set standards that other socialites could only aspire to match. The marriage proved more than a mere social alliance. August and Caroline's union was marked by genuine affection that endured until death, producing 6 children: Perry, August Jr., Frederica, Jane Pauline, known as Jenny, Oliver Hazard Perry, and Raymond Rogers. Through these offspring, the Belmonts' influence would extend far beyond their own time, though their rise gave birth to the somewhat cutting observation that Belmont keeps everything but the 10 Commandments. Yet even as the Belmonts reached the pinnacle of social success, their story was not without its shadows. Age brought with it personal tragedies: the death of a daughter in her youth, the suicide of a son casting dark clouds over their glittering world. When pneumonia claimed August Belmont Sr. on the 24th of November, 1890, at the age of 77, his funeral at the Church of the Ascension drew New York's most prominent citizens, and his burial in Newport's Island Cemetery marked the end of an extraordinary life. But the Belmont legacy was far from finished. As the 19th century drew to a close, 3 sons, August Jr., Perry, and Oliver, stood poised to extend their father's influence into new realms of American life. The Belmont family's influence in American society extended far beyond the realms of banking and politics, reaching into the world of thoroughbred racing with a force that would permanently reshape the sport. In 1867, at Jerome Park Racetrack in the Bronx, the first Belmont Stakes was run, a race that would become the oldest and longest jewel in racing's Triple Crown, bearing the name of the immigrant banker who had risen to such heights in American society. But it was August Belmont Jr., born in 1853, who would truly transform both the sport of kings and the city of New York itself. The younger Belmont ascended to the presidency of the Jockey Club, wielding authority as chairman of the New York State Racing Commission while helping found the National Steeplechase Association. His masterwork in the racing world came in 1905 with the establishment of Belmont Park in Elmont, New York, a track that would become the permanent home of his family's namesake stakes race. Yet August Jr.'s ambitions extended far beyond the thundering hooves of thoroughbreds. In an era when New York City strained against the limitations of surface transportation, he emerged as the visionary who would reshape the metropolis itself. As president of the Interborough Rapid Transit Company, he orchestrated the financing and construction of New York's first subway system, securing the staggering sum of $25 million in private funding. When the system opened in 1904, it fundamentally altered the city's patterns of growth and movement. His civic engagement reached into multiple spheres. In 1892, he helped establish the City Club of New York to enhance local governance, and his influence stretched beyond the city's borders to the Cape Cod Canal, which he helped finance and build. But perhaps the most dramatic transformation of the Belmont legacy came through Alva Belmont, who married into the family in 1896 after divorcing William Kissam Vanderbilt. Following the death of her second husband, Oliver Hazard Perry Belmont, in 1908, Alva emerged as a titan of the women's suffrage movement. She founded the Political Equality League, co-founded the National Woman's Party with Alice Paul, and converted her Newport mansion, Marble House, into a fortress of suffragist activity. Her financial contributions were extraordinary. In 1914 alone, she poured more than $12,000 into the Congressional Union for Woman Suffrage. When suffragists first picketed the White House in 1917, Alva Belmont's influence could be felt in every raised banner and determined face. The passage of the 19th Amendment in 1920 marked not an end, but a beginning, as she pressed the National Woman's Party to expand its fight against all forms of gender discrimination. Thus, from their Jewish roots in Alzey to reshaping America through finance, politics, urban development and social reform, the Belmonts exemplified how immigrant ambition could transform not just a family, but a nation. In the glamorous world of luxury automobiles and sizzling sports cars, where names of legendary families sparkle like chrome badges, it's often seen that over the generations, the power behind the company wheels have drifted away from the families whose names actually done the decals on the front of the vehicle. Think about Ferruccio Lamborghini, who saw his possible family empire shift ownership merely 11 years after revving up, or the Ferrari lineage, who had to watch as control of the prancing horse slipped from their grasp. Yet, amid this high-octane narrative of heritage and horsepower, there stands a surname that hasn't just clung to the steering wheel, but has floored the gas pedal on its legacy and fortune. In today's episode of Old Money Luxury, we share the saga of the Porsche family, steering a robust $55 billion automotive empire without any sign of slowing down. Indeed, this family tree is revved up with both engineering genius and controversial business practices, cutthroat corporate strategy and legendary design innovations, and generational wealth transfer that's sharper than a hairpin turn, as we describe the Porsche family, when $55 billion builds a luxury car empire. Hold on to your seatbelts, because the Porsche-Piëch family, an iconic Austrian-German industrial dynasty, is riding high with an estimated net worth of a whopping 22.5 billion euros as of 2024, placing them firmly as Germany's 7th richest family. And at the helm of this high-octane empire is Wolfgang Porsche, born amidst the engine roars on the 10th of May 1943 in Stuttgart, Germany. A true gearhead from the cradle, Wolfgang is not just any business mogul. He's automotive royalty and grandson of Ferdinand Porsche, the legendary founder himself, steering the family legacy with a firm grip on the wheel at Porsche AG and Volkswagen AG. But this family's fortune isn't just about inheriting an enviable last name. It's built on a solid foundation of owning a hefty 31.9% of Porsche SE shares that control a 53.3% slice of Volkswagen AG, making them the puppeteers behind one of the globe's largest car manufacturers. Yet, their influence in the automotive universe doesn't end at corporate boardrooms. The 2022 IPO launch of Porsche AG alone pumped up 9.1 billion euros, valuing the iconic car maker at a jaw-dropping 73 billion euros in total. But why stop at cars? The Porsche portfolio is as diverse as it is deep, from tech startups across North America, Europe and Israel aiming to revolutionize mobility and industrial tech, to plush real estate spanning Germany, Austria and Switzerland. These folks know the art of spreading their bets. And then there's the high seas. The Porsche-designed Elan GT6 yacht is where luxury meets seaworthiness. Stretching an impressive 15.14 meters, this flagship vessel isn't just a boat. It's a floating monument of Porsche's dedication to sleek design and raw power. Certainly, it's a perfect match for those who like their champagne on the deck of a yacht that cuts through waves like a hot knife through butter. Not to be outdone, the Frauscher X Porsche 850 Phantom air-electric yacht is a marvel of marine engineering. It's shorter, but no less sweet, spanning 8.67 meters of pure innovation with electric motors that zip through the water without so much as a whisper, and enough space to host a small soiree. But why keep it all sea level when you can fly? The Porsche family's private aviation fleet would turn any airline green with envy. The Cessna 680 Citation Sovereign Plus is just the start, boasting a range of over 11,000 kilometers and a speed that can outrun the sunset. And let's not forget the lineup of globals. From the 5500 to the 8000, each a sky palace with specs that could make a tech geek swoon. Indeed, whether it's on the Autobahn across the Atlantic or high above the clouds, the Porsche dynasty isn't just getting from A to B, it's truly making moves. However, this classic car clan isn't all squeaky clean polish when it comes to its business origins. Let's head back in time to find out exactly how they made their billions and what secrets lurk beneath the revving engine. The Porsche family name, with its roots deeply embedded in the fertile cultural soil of ancient Europe, offers a vivid panorama of history and heritage. You see, Porsche emerges from the Turkic word bogaris, a name that translates to wolf or snow leopard, creatures renowned for their cunning and resilience, and certainly a symbolic representation of a family lineage as fierce and adaptable as the animals it evokes. Furthermore, the name Bogoris, from which Porsche comes from, parallels the Slavic name Boris, underscoring a shared reverence for the wolf and snow leopard across cultures. Contrasting with the wild echoes of Porsche is the surname Piëch, the other half of the family dynasty, originating from the German Piechardt, or small stone. Likely commemorating an ancestor known for their steadfast presence in stony, unforgiving terrains, this name too has travelled and transformed, appearing across Europe in various incarnations like Pichuta, Picha and Pichuki, and even crossing linguistic borders to emerge as Peace in English or as a charming first name. Amidst this swirling blend of backgrounds stands the first family patriarch, Ferdinand Porsche, born in 1875 in what is now Vratislavice nad Nisou in Czechia. The son of Anna and Anton Porsche, Ferdinand was a child with an insatiable curiosity for technology, kindled by his father's mastery in panel beating. And this early fascination would fuel his future, steering him towards creating some of the most iconic automobiles in history. Furthermore, his curiosity in electricity was particularly strong, and by the age of 13, Porsche was already installing electric doorbells, and by 16, he ventured into electrical lighting. Then, at age 18, he secured a position with Vienna's Bella Egger & Co., a role that not only honed his engineering skills, but also allowed him to take university classes, enhancing his understanding of electric drivetrains. At Bella Egger & Co., Porsche quickly ascended to head of testing, and his innovative work there soon earned him the Pötting Prize in 1905, recognizing him as Austria's top automotive engineer, yes, in the entire country. His growing renown consequently drew the attention of Austro-Daimler, where he became the technical director in 1906, significantly influencing the company's automobile range. You see, among Porsche's earliest ventures into automotive design was the 1898 electric car, the Lohner Porsche, which featured innovative wheel hub motors. Displayed at the 1900 Paris World Fair, even back then it was a precursor to modern electric vehicles, but Porsche didn't stop with electric innovation. He also explored hybrid technologies. His Semper Vivus combined battery power with a gasoline engine, pioneering the serial hybrid drive, a system allowing extended electric operation before switching to the combustion engine. Throughout his career, Porsche remained at the forefront of integrating electric and gasoline power, crafting designs that were both revolutionary and practical. However, it was his creation of the Volkswagen Beetle that would arguably be his greatest and most controversial legacy to the world. Before Ferdinand Porsche laid the foundations for the iconic Porsche car company, his engineering genius was already reshaping the automotive landscape. At Austro-Daimler, where he was chief designer from 1906 to 1923, Porsche's creative spirit and technical expertise came to the forefront, for it was here that he designed the Austro-Daimler Sascha, a lithe, four-cylinder racing car. Despite its modest 1.1-litre engine, the Sascha excelled in the grueling Targa Florio race in Sicily, showcasing Porsche's knack for engineering vehicles that punched above their weight. Further demonstrating his versatility, Porsche developed the Marja, a robust 30-horsepower model named in honor of Mercedes Jelinek's sister, André Marja Jelinek. And his efforts continued to bear fruit on the racetrack, with an impressive tally of 43 victories in 53 races for his 1922 design. Additionally, Porsche's tenure at Austro-Daimler wasn't just marked by racing success, he profoundly influenced the company's broader model range. His significant contributions earned him the position of managing director by 1916, along with an honorary doctorate from the Vienna University of Technology the same year. Then, in 1923, Porsche's career took a new direction as he joined Daimler Motorengesellschaft in Stuttgart, assuming roles as technical director and board member. There, he engineered several victorious race cars, including the formidable Mercedes-Benz SSK, a stalwart of 1920s motor racing. However, his proposal for a compact, efficient Mercedes-Benz car met resistance from the company's board, precipitating his move in 1929 to Steyr Automobile. His time there was cut short by the economic strains of the Great Depression, leading to his firing. Undeterred, Porsche's innovative spirit thrived as he founded his own company that would become the Porsche we know today in 1931, along with Dr. Anton Piëch, his son-in-law, and racing driver Adolf Rosenberger. Porsche's design genius was further highlighted in the 1930s with the inception of the Volkswagen Beetle, although this project is marred by its controversial origins. In 1937, Porsche joined the Nazi Party and later became an SS officer. His deep involvement with these organizations provided him significant advantages in his field, but also permanently linked his name to the Nazi regime. As an SS Oberführer, Porsche had direct access to top-level resources and support, leveraging his party connections for security and operations within his company. Thus, the development of the Volkswagen Beetle, originally termed the KDF-Wagen, or Strength Through Joy car, emerged directly from Hitler's vision of an affordable car for the average German worker. You see, this initiative was part of the Nazi regime's broader agenda to promote lifestyle enhancements under their rule. Therefore, Ferdinand Porsche was instrumental in turning Hitler's idea into reality, receiving a commission in 1934 to design what would later become one of the most iconic cars in history. The Beetle's design drew on existing ideas from various sources, including the work of Tatra and Hans Ledwinka and Joseph Ganz. However, it was Porsche's expert engineering that transformed these influences into a functional, mass-producible vehicle, strongly backed by Hitler. The project received substantial funding from the Nazi government, intending to highlight the regime's accomplishments through this new, accessible automotive technology. By 1938, the Beetle's initial prototypes were being produced, showcasing Porsche's ability to bring innovative automotive concepts to fruition. Yet, through it all, post-World War II, the Volkswagen Beetle transcended its Nazi-era origins, becoming a global symbol of economical and reliable transportation. It played a pivotal role in post-war Germany's economic resurgence and captured the hearts of millions worldwide, eventually embodying the freedom and spirit of the 1960s counterculture movements in the United States, in an ironic twist of symbolism. Indeed, its unique design and mechanical reliability elevated it to a cult status, marking it as a vehicle that not only survived but thrived beyond its initial political and ideological associations. And yet, for everybody younger than the boomer generation, Porsche as a company, and thus the family itself, is more connected to luxury cars and racing vehicles. In order to find out how the Porsche dynasty built that connection, let's flip to the next chapter. Anton Piëch, born into an intellectually rigorous Viennese lawyer's household on the 21st of September 1894, was destined to intertwine his fate with that of the burgeoning Porsche dynasty. Growing up under the tutelage of his father, Anton Paul Piëch, young Anton was deeply influenced by a world of legal discourse, thus building a foundation for the child that would not only shape his career, but also prove pivotal in the destiny of the Porsche-Piëch family. Consequently, inheriting his father's affinity for law, Anton pursued his legal studies at the University of Vienna, culminating in a doctorate of jurisprudence in 1922. His early career as a lawyer in Vienna was marked by high-profile cases and significant challenges that swiftly elevated his status within Austrian legal circles. And among his clientele were several Austrian Nazis, a controversial aspect that mirrors the shadowy historical ties of many German automotive companies, including BMW and the aforementioned Volkswagen. However, it was Anton's legal representation of Ferdinand Porsche that marked a defining moment in his career and the Porsche company's history. In the late 1920s, Ferdinand Porsche, then a celebrated technical director at Daimler-Benz, found himself embroiled in a contentious departure from the company. Intent on establishing his own engineering firm, Porsche faced a legal battle over his contract's non-compete clauses, an obstacle that threatened his future ambitions. Furthermore, Anton Piëch's engagement in this critical litigation went beyond professional duty. It was a crucial intersection of personal and professional realms that would cement his place within the Porsche legacy. Anton's adept handling of the case against Daimler-Benz not only highlighted his legal prowess, but also facilitated Ferdinand Porsche's ability to found his own company, what we now know as Porsche itself. But the victory in this litigation not only elevated Anton Piëch's reputation as a formidable lawyer, it also marked the commencement of his deeper integration into the Porsche family. By marrying Louise Porsche in 1928, Anton solidified his bonds both personally and professionally with the Porsche lineage. And this union was a strategic alliance that intertwined their destinies. With the establishment of Porsche GmbH in Stuttgart in 1931, Anton Piëch's role evolved to encompass both legal counsel and strategic investor, holding a 10% share of the new company. His legal acumen and strategic insights were thus instrumental during the company's nascent challenges, safeguarding its operations and guiding its evolution in a rapidly changing industry. And by 1937, Piëch's influence within the company had notably increased. He played a central role in the formation of Porsche KG, a limited partnership created to enhance the firm's operational scope. Yet, as World War II unfolded, Anton Piëch faced heightened responsibilities and challenges. For example, in 1941, he assumed the role of plant manager at the Volkswagen Werk plant in Wolfsburg, Germany, a facility integral to the Nazi war effort, tasked with producing Volkswagen vehicles. Under Piëch's oversight, the plant underwent significant expansion to also manufacture wartime materials, including the V-1 flying bomb. Additionally, Piëch's tenure at Volkswagen Werk is marked by the controversial use of forced labor. To meet the immense labor demands of the expanded operations, the plant employed a vast number of forced laborers from occupied territories. These individuals, including prisoners of war and civilians from various European countries, endured brutal working conditions, excessive hours, insufficient nutrition, and severe discipline. Therefore, Piëch's leadership at the plant, despite its perceived necessity according to the German leadership at the time, is critically viewed through the lens of historical scrutiny. His management capabilities were evident as he navigated the complex and demanding environment of wartime production. But Anton Piëch's legacy is thus a combination of professional achievements marred by moral dilemmas. And this complex legacy continued to influence the Porsche family's business undertakings long after his sudden death in August 1952. Following his passing, his wife, Louise, assumed directorial duties in Austria, perpetuating the Piëch influence in the family's corporate affairs, while their children would soon grow up to bring the Porsche dynasty to new heights. Amid the backdrop of the Volkswagen saga, two other Porsche family members, Ferdinand Anton Ernst Ferry Porsche and Ferdinand Alexander Butzi Porsche, were carving out their own niches in automotive history, transforming Porsche AG into a symbol of luxury and racing excellence. Specifically, their roles were instrumental in the development of iconic models like the Porsche 911, marking pivotal milestones in the evolution of the auto industry. First, Ferry Porsche, born in September 1909 in Wiener Neustadt, Austria, was also raised in an environment steeped in automotive innovation. His father, the aforementioned Ferdinand Porsche Sr., helped Ferry hone his knowledge through years spent at the family design office, where he was among the initial employees. But World War II brought challenges and opportunities for Ferry. With his father imprisoned, he assumed leadership of the family business. Yet, after the war, in 1948, in a small sawmill in Gmünd, Austria, Ferry bounced back and actualized his vision by creating the Porsche 356. This car was not merely another addition to the burgeoning roster of post-war vehicles. It represented the birth of the Porsche brand, being the first to prominently feature the Porsche name. As such, it was a crucial foundational element in the company's storied history. The 356 was pioneering on multiple fronts. Its design broke away from the norms of its time, featuring a lightweight, streamlined body that was rare in automotive design during that era. The rear engine configuration, which would become a hallmark of Porsche vehicles, was innovative for offering a lower center of gravity, enhancing handling and driving performance, a novelty that spoke directly to sports car enthusiasts. And in the broader automotive world, the Porsche 356's introduction was a landmark event. It challenged prevailing automotive manufacturing and design philosophies, emphasizing that sports cars could be both aesthetically pleasing and technically superior. Its success on the market catalyzed a shift towards performance-oriented sports cars among European manufacturers, influencing a generation of automotive design. Furthermore, under Ferry Porsche's leadership, the commitment of the company to motorsport was not only maintained, but significantly intensified. Thus, Porsche's involvement in racing became a cornerstone of the brand's identity under his stewardship. The introduction of the 550 Spider marked the beginning of this era, but it was the development of the Porsche 917 that underscored the brand's racing pedigree. For example, the 917's victory at the prestigious 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1970 was an iconic moment to commemorate Ferry's belief in motorsports as a crucible for testing and refining road car technology. And this philosophy, that a car's true mettle is proven on the racetrack, became a guiding principle for the company. Therefore, Ferry Porsche's vision transformed Porsche into a brand celebrated not just for its luxury, but for its indomitable spirit in the competitive world of motorsport. Continuing this legacy, Ferry's son, Ferdinand Alexander Butzi Porsche, born on the 11th of December 1935 in Stuttgart, Germany, infused fresh energy into the family's automotive ambitions. Butzi, a graduate of the Ulm School of Design, left an indelible mark on automotive design with the creation of the Porsche 911 in 1963. Conceived as a successor to the 356, the 911 was initially named the 901, but underwent a rebranding due to Peugeot's rights over car names with 3 digits, where the middle number is 0. And the 911 emerged as an instant classic, epitomizing Porsche's blend of technical brilliance and aesthetic appeal. You see, Butzi Porsche's philosophy of marrying functionality with simplicity in the design of the 911 created a vehicle that not only excelled in performance, but also stood out for its distinctive aesthetic appeal. Specifically, the rear engine layout of the 911 broke from conventional sports car designs, granting it unique handling characteristics and a robust sporting profile. Thus, this innovative approach didn't just redefine standards in car design, it solidified the 911's position as a central figure in the luxury sports car market. Indeed, the 911 remains a cornerstone of Porsche's identity, continually evolving over the decades while still retaining the essential attributes of Butsi's initial design. Today, the model exemplifies a blend of tradition and innovation, maintaining its revered status within the automotive community. Together, Ferry and Butzi Porsche have woven a legacy of innovation, performance, and stylistic excellence that continues to drive Porsche AG forward. Yet, as important as design is to the growth of a car company, without the business being handled, all the brakes get pushed. In the next chapter, we'll see how a specific family member turned Porsche into a global money-making behemoth. Ferdinand Piëch's tenure as the chairman of the Volkswagen Group from 1993 to 2002, and again from 2002 to 2015, was a period of transformative change, turning the conglomerate into one of the world's preeminent automobile manufacturers. You see, Piëch, who joined Audi in 1972, applied his strategic vision to revitalize the brand, enhancing its status to become a globally respected luxury automaker. And his significant contribution to the development of the Audi Quattro, an innovative all-wheel drive system, gave Audi a definitive competitive advantage in the market. During his second stint at the helm of Volkswagen Group, Piëch was pivotal in launching major initiatives, like the creation of the Volkswagen Phaeton. This luxury sedan was designed to compete with the world's elite, signifying VW's ambitious entry into high-end markets. Furthermore, he spearheaded the development of the Bugatti Veyron, a high-performance sports car that became a testament to Volkswagen's engineering capabilities. Piëch's role extended beyond conventional automotive design to influencing VW's strategic direction towards electric vehicles and autonomous driving technologies, sectors anticipated to dominate future mobility. His visionary approach laid the groundwork for Volkswagen Group's advancements in these critical areas. However, Piëch's leadership style was not without its detractors. Known for his assertive and sometimes domineering personality, Piëch leveraged internal rivalries to strengthen his own position, a tactic that often led to friction within the corporate hierarchy. Notably, this aggressive management style precipitated his confrontation with VW chief executive Bernd Pischetsrieder, whom Piëch replaced in a move that underscored his influential but contentious leadership. Beyond the boardroom, Piëch's personal life was equally complex and intertwined with dramatic family dynamics. He fathered 12 children across 4 different relationships, his familial affairs marked by liaisons that included relationships with his cousin's wife and other significant partners. These personal choices led to considerable familial strife, and his long-term relationship with Marlene Porsche ended when he left her for Ursula Plasser, a nanny with whom he had 3 children. But Piëch's enduring impact on the automotive industry and his strategic influence on Volkswagen Group's trajectory are undeniable. His leadership not only propelled VW to become Europe's largest car maker, but also positioned it as a formidable player on the global stage. Moreover, Piëch's legacy continues through his descendants, many of whom have taken roles within the industry, perpetuating the family's long-standing influence in the automotive sector. Now, Wolfgang Porsche, as the current chairman of Porsche Automobile Holding SE, has profoundly influenced the leadership and strategic direction of the company. His role extends beyond mere operational oversight to fundamentally defining Porsche's identity and shaping public perception of the brand. And he has been a key figure in significant decisions, including the strategic reorganization of Porsche AG in 1992, the diversification of its product portfolio, and the pivotal investment in Volkswagen AG in 2005. Under Wolfgang Porsche's stewardship, the company has adeptly navigated evolving market dynamics. It has made substantial investments in electric vehicles and digital technologies, preparing for a future where these elements will drive growth. Looking forward, Porsche is gearing up for its most ambitious array of product launches, with a pronounced emphasis on e-mobility and sustainability. The lineup includes the all-electric 718 and Cayenne set for release mid-decade, along with plans for an innovative electric SUV that will surpass the Cayenne in scale. And the company is not just evolving in terms of product offerings, but is also at the forefront of integrating cutting-edge technologies such as cloud computing, artificial intelligence, and big data analytics into its operations. Yet, as Wolfgang Porsche considers the future leadership of the company, succession planning has become a focal point. He has hinted at his nephew Ferdinand Oliver Porsche as a likely successor. Born in March 1961, Ferdinand Oliver Porsche is the son of Ferdinand Alexander Porsche and the great-grandson of the company's founder, cementing his deep ties to the brand's foundational values and vision. Already actively involved in key company committees, Ferdinand Oliver represents the next generation in the Porsche-Piëch lineage, poised to continue the family's legacy in the automotive industry. In the world of old money, that is, wealth passed down through multiple generations in a family, there can be a lot of superlatives attached to this enigmatic sect of human society. Old money families are the most powerful, the most discreet, the hardest to get into. And yet, even for members of the old money class around the world, there is one family that seemingly towers above them all. The ones that make the powerful look powerless, the ones who make billionaires look like baby boys, and the ones that live more like kings than actual kings. Indeed, one name in modern history reigns above all when we think of old money, and that is, quite naturally, the name of Rothschild. Now, sure, you've seen a ton of videos and documentaries about this family. You've been told the financial details, you've learned about the political power plays, and of course you've heard the theories about their global networks. But have you ever heard the full story, from the very first member of the family up until today, in a neutral, unbiased format? Have you ever been told about the step-by-step growth of this one-of-a-kind dynasty without any agenda on either side, leaving the interpretation of their influence up for you to decide on your own? In today's episode, we'll allow you to do just that, telling the good, the bad, and the luxury of the entire saga as we describe how the Rothschilds went from new money to old money. In the raw heart of Frankfurt's Jewish ghetto emerged an unlikely hero on the 23rd of February, 1744. Named Meyer Amschel Rothschild, his birthplace was one of Germany's earliest and most restrictive ghettos, existing in the teeming underbelly of the Holy Roman Empire from 1462 until 1811. Judengasse, or Jews' Lane, was a labyrinth of squalor, a congested and unhygienic curve of cobblestones, stretching a mere 10 to 12 feet across. Sprawling from the Bornheimer Gate in the north to the Jewish cemetery in the south, the district would lock its 3,000 inhabitants within its unyielding clasp daily. Sundays, Christian holidays, and the cloak of night transformed this ghetto into an inescapable fortress, its occupants forbidden from entering public gardens or attending coffee shops. You see, this was a world without freedoms. Ownership of land, affiliation with guilds, and certain professions were forbidden fruits to this community. You see, the sheer density of life in Judengasse was beyond comprehension. Several families huddled together in single apartments, a concentration of humanity that the rest of Frankfurt could scarcely fathom. Amidst this harsh reality, Meyer Amschel was born to Amschel Moses Rothschild and his wife, Schonsche Rothschild. His father, a money changer and silk trader, counted Prince William of Hesse among his clientele. Despite this royal connection, Amschel Moses was far from wealthy, and the family lived in crowded conditions, sharing their dwelling with an extended family of up to 30 members. But the hand of fate can be both cruel and kind. When Meyer Amschel lost both his parents to an epidemic in 1755 and 1756, he found himself under the mentorship of Wolf Jacob Oppenheim in Hanover. This fortuitous turn of events initiated Meyer Amschel into the intricate web of business and the exclusive world of court agents. Adept in dealing with rare coins and medals, Rothschild returned to Frankfurt in 1764. His reputation preceded him, and his clientele swiftly expanded. His rise to prominence was then accelerated by a lucrative deal with the hereditary prince of Hesse Castle. His marriage in 1770 to the daughter of a court agent was another feather in his cap, bringing with it a hefty dowry and a network of influential connections. He was fast becoming Frankfurt's eminent dealer in coins, medals, and antiques. Despite being victim to a substantial embezzlement by an unprincipled employee, his fortune was so significant that he still reigned supreme as one of the era's most prominent bankers. Thus, Meyer Amschel Rothschild, a child of the ghetto, ascended to become a legend, unperturbed by the prejudices and limitations that marked his humble beginnings. As the mantle passed from Meyer Amschel to Nathan Rothschild following the former's demise, the family empire not merely endured, but flourished, speaking to the father's ingenuity and the son's tenacity. As mentioned, Meyer Amschel's association with William IX, the hereditary prince of Hesse Castle, forms the first core part of the controversies surrounding the Rothschilds' power structure. The story goes that when Napoleon ousted William from power in the 1790s, he entrusted his vast fortune to Meyer Amschel for safeguarding, resulting in Rothschild's own poverty while preserving the prince's riches. This tale, although reportedly fictional, does harbour an element of truth. Meyer Amschel's real duty to William wasn't guarding gold, but overseeing his English investments. Appointed as Hofaktor by William IX in 1769, Meyer Amschel supervised the prince's estate and tax collection. This fruitful alliance, coupled with the prince's opulence, formed the cornerstone of the Rothschild dynasty, eventually gaining a commanding presence in European finance and banking. Thus, this association with William IX propelled Meyer Amschel's third son, Nathan Rothschild, onto the path of success. Born on September 16, 1777, in the confines of Frankfurt, Nathan Rothschild's childhood spent within the Frankfurt ghetto also left an indelible mark. Under his father's tutelage, the young Nathan learned the family trade, banking, and absorbed the sense of unity pervading the Jewish community of Frankfurt. Commissioned to England in his 20s by his father, Nathan rapidly ascended to prominence, overseeing William IX's English investments and, in time, establishing himself as a banking titan in London. Now, a pivotal event took place in 1806 when Nathan tied the knot with Hannah Barrett Cohen. This strategic intermarriage afforded him an elevated social standing and a network of influential business contacts. Hannah, hailing from a prosperous family of linen traders, was born in 1783. Her father, Levi Barrett Cohen, had migrated to London from Amsterdam in 1770, achieving some repute as a merchant. In fact, the House of Cohen had prior business transactions with Nathan's father, the aforementioned Meyer Amschel. Specifically, upon Nathan's arrival in London in 1798, he was recommended to the Cohen family for an informal apprenticeship. Now their marriage indeed helped Nathan gain social stature and business connections. Hannah exceeded the traditional expectations of a Rothschild wife, participating actively in business and advisory roles. Her financial prowess was acknowledged, and she was deemed a formidable business partner. Thus, her marriage to Nathan not only opened a treasure trove of valuable connections, but also helped to catalyze the growth and triumph of the Rothschild banking dynasty. Now, by 1810, the family enterprise had evolved into Meyer Amschel Rothschild and Sons. Nearing the twilight of his life, Meyer Amschel would issue a groundbreaking decree from his deathbed. The family business was to be the exclusive property of his 5 sons, a dictate that was stringently followed by his successors. Now, in the clandestine cobwebs of Europe's politico-economic circles, the Rothschild dynasty were no strangers. Like silent puppet masters, they manipulated the game of power with panache, their financial roots entangling the continent's elite. Men of power danced, their strings delicately controlled by these generous patrons, either through promising investment gambits or hush-hush exchanges of illicit wealth. Ominously, the elder Rothschild, Amschel, was once caught musing, "As Jews, our fate is to buy our way through or watch the Gentiles take the lead." These subtle maneuvers, while drawing criticism, nonetheless amplified the family's reach, fortifying their success. Prominent among their web of debtors was the exiled King Louis XVIII. The maestro of their financial orchestra at the time, Nathan Rothschild, brokered a loan of £200,000 for the British Crown, facilitating the monarch's grand return to France in 1814. Yet, like any true political chess master, their benevolence came with a ticking time bomb. Nathan demanded a prompt repayment, with a handsome interest, 3 years later. Thus, the Rothschilds weaved a network of loans and investments, their tendrils reaching out to key political players like Wilhelm von Humboldt in the 1820s, promising them long-term gains. Now their most invaluable asset was the perpetually penniless Austrian statesman Clemens von Metternich, a regular recipient of the Rothschilds' fiscal generosity. In return for their assistance, Metternich provided them with vital political intelligence and business opportunities, whilst also championing their cause for Jewish emancipation in Frankfurt. The extraordinary loan of 900,000 gulden, extended to Metternich after his staunch support of the Frankfurt Jewish community, however, raised a few skeptical eyebrows. This alliance bore fruit in the form of a regular exchange of classified information between Metternich and Salomon Rothschild. But the partnership was not without its critics. The unfortunate, self-inflicted end of David Parish and the collapse of his enterprise, Fries and Company, were blamed on the Rothschilds' burgeoning influence and their newfound alliance with Metternich. These intriguing affairs cast a shadow over the Rothschild name, painting them as puppet masters of corruption, a dark reputation nurtured by business rivalry and leveraging the anti-Semitic sentiment of the time. Additionally, in the world of art patronage, the Rothschilds wielded an equally formidable influence. Over the years, they amassed a treasure trove of artistic gems, their collection becoming a symbol of their prestige. For example, a fondness for the 17th century Dutch masters was a family trait. James Rothschild in 1840 secured Rembrandt's renowned The Standard Bearer, placing this jewel in the crown of their collection at the Grand Salon of Rue Lafitte. However, contrary to popular belief, their interest was not simply confined to the classics. In their world, art was more than an investment. It was a symbol of their wealth, yes, but also a way of life. It gave life to their stately mansions and bespoke of their refined taste. Music, too, was integral to their repertoire. For instance, Nathan Rothschild, in January 1828, engaged the services of the acclaimed Ignaz Moscheles, Felix Mendelssohn's mentor. Their salons regularly echoed with the sublime melodies of masters like Mendelssohn, Liszt, Hall, and Joachim. The Parisian chapter of Polish legend Frédéric Chopin's storied career even began under the patronage of none other than James Rothschild. In fact, such was the depth of their involvement in the world of music that even legendary anti-Semite Richard Wagner, it was rumored, banked with the Rothschilds. Despite converting their fortune into far-reaching influence, the Rothschilds remained true to their Jewish faith. Karl Rothschild was said to have clearly asserted that their wealth was a Jewish legacy. They championed the cause of Jewish advancement, in stark contrast to the prevalent misconception that they were indifferent to the hardships faced by their fellow Jews. In truth, they contributed generously to Jewish charities and schools. Their rise to prominence did not obscure their humble origins or the suffering of their brethren. They fought for their community's equal rights, formed strategic alliances, and enhanced their standing as a remarkable family, far surpassing their material success. Now espionage, a nemesis lurking in every shadow, posed an escalating threat, especially when their dispatches were laced with elements of political subterfuge or potentially lucrative information. Thus, 1814 marked a significant shift towards the employment of private couriers, a move calculated to outmaneuver this constant menace. This past era before instantaneous electronic communication was dominated by the indispensable private courier, and in the Rothschilds' grand scheme of affairs, they formed the essential backbone of their vast international communication grid. They were the trusted guardians of priceless information, the lifeblood that breathed power into the sprawling body of the Rothschilds' financial empire. Thus, the couriers were more than just bearers of messages. They were crucial defenders against breaches of information. You see, in a world where a whiff of news could alter the course of markets and fortunes, their private network rendered the velocity of communication as vital as the information itself. As adaptable as they were essential, Couriers had the flexibility to hasten their delivery based on the family's exigencies. Moreover, these couriers were a symbol of the global extent of the Rothschilds. In an age fragmented by national demarcations, linguistic obstacles, and complex geopolitics, the family's private couriers formed a seamless, efficient network that spanned the breadth of Europe. By the winter of 1827, Solomon Rothschild, Nathan's brother, had found this system deeply rooted in their operations in Vienna. It was a system so exquisitely refined that it elicited the envy of their competitors, triggering a slew of imitations. Nevertheless, for a good part of the early 19th century, the Rothschilds' courier service remained unrivaled in delivering premier service to diplomats and statesmen. This intricate communications network is the second core pillar of discussions involving a clandestine society revolving around the Rothschilds. The audacity of their influence, the lightning speed of their operations, and the depth of their couriers' reach fuels historical investigations of a more covert, more nefarious global network. Indeed, the family harnessed their mighty infrastructure for their advantage. However, the extent to which it qualifies as a larger global plan is at your discretion, viewers. Additionally, while this out-of-family network undeniably paved their path to eminence, the true brilliance lay in the synergy among the 5 Rothschild houses in London, Frankfurt, Paris, Vienna, and Naples. This multinational matrix, the world's largest banking structure, was the conduit for their financial influence throughout the European economic epicenters. However, the empire, admittedly built on secret family dealings, private communications, and a vast global network, was left reeling after the sudden death of Nathan Rothschild. Nathan's influential hand had harmoniously orchestrated the operations of the 5 houses. "We owe him everything, really everything," his brother Karl had once admitted. His sudden departure in 1836 jolted the family, and with the markets already on a downward spiral, it only seemed to hasten the looming financial crisis. As the calendar pages of the 1830s were torn away, the illustrious Rothschilds shifted their formidable might towards the pulsating arena of industrial finance. With a calculated gamble, they invested a lion's share of their resources into the construction of railways, effectively grasping the helm as they navigated the birth of France's railway system. Yet their commanding role was seen through the dark spectacles of suspicion by a burgeoning faction of the media, resulting in an alarming rise in negative sentiment towards the distinguished family. The year 1846, a harbinger of ill fortune, saw the Rothschilds' reputation gravely marred. A train, under their aegis, hurtled off the tracks and screeched to a disastrous end, claiming 14 innocent lives in its ruinous aftermath. This catastrophic event served as a catalyst, positioning the Rothschilds at the center of the intensifying social revolution of 1848. Public sentiment, balancing on a razor's edge between civil rights and an ever-widening chasm of wealth inequality, began to broil with antipathy towards them. The family's impregnable fortress in Frankfurt came under assault. Windows splintered under the wrath of angry stones, the sacrosanctity of their haven violated. More misfortune pursued the Rothschilds as the plunging value of government securities, which formed the bedrock of their investments, threatened to tip them over the edge of financial abyss. The fickle finger of fate extended a lifeline to the London household, sheltering it from the revolutionary tempest. This fortuitous turn of events enabled the London Rothschilds to extend a crucial lifeline to their kin, preserving their legacy from total obliteration. In the decades that unfurled between 1850 and 1914, the Rothschilds grew their influence like tendrils reaching across banking, politics, and a myriad of significant events. Quite notably, in this time, they became titanic movers in the world's political machine. A key instance of this influence is Lionel de Rothschild's role in financing the construction of the Suez Canal. You see, initially the Suez Canal Company found it challenging to sell shares internationally. Countries including Britain, the United States, Austria, and Russia didn't buy any shares, whereas all French shares were rapidly sold in France. Opening for shipping on November 17, 1869, the Suez Canal significantly influenced global trade and contributed to an increase in the European colonization of Africa. Ismail Pasha, Said Pasha's successor, was compelled to sell Egypt's shares due to mounting external debts. To facilitate this, in 1875, the London banking house of N.M. Rothschild and Sons lent £4 million to the British Prime Minister, Benjamin Disraeli, acting for the British government. This facilitated the purchase of the Suez Canal shares. Now, the Rothschild family's role in the Suez Canal project is just a snapshot of their vast influence in international finance and politics. The Rothschilds additionally played a crucial role in the emancipation of Brazil from Portugal. The agreement stipulated that the nascent Brazilian government must remit £2 million to Portugal as a cost of freedom. The monumental task of marshalling this sum fell to the finance titans, N.M. Rothschild and Sons. Commandeering the London market with their deft strategies, they successfully amassed the required capital for the newly anointed Empire of Brazil. Furthermore, the family's reach extended even into Africa, bankrolling Cecil Rhodes in the establishment of Rhodesia. Additionally, when the Russo-Japanese War cast its shadow, the Japanese government turned to the London and Paris branches of the Rothschilds. Their consortium responded by issuing Japanese war bonds worth an astonishing £11.5 million. Thus, in this era, the name Rothschild resonated with echoes of extraordinary political power, financial might, and opulent decadence. In fact, their empire, encompassing at least 41 palaces of unparalleled luxury, led the British Chancellor of the Exchequer, David Lloyd George, to assert that Nathan, Lord Rothschild, was the most powerful man in Britain by 1909. Now, as the opening decades of the 20th century opened, they brought a seismic shift to the Rothschild dynasty. Their erstwhile harmony fractured by the emergence of national taxation. The unified ledger of commerce they once proudly held fractured, causing their various arms to diverge, establishing themselves as autonomous banking entities. The once illustrious quintet of brothers and their offspring had by the time of the First Great War become a memory rather than a reality. It was the ominous rise of the Third Reich during the 1930s, however, that truly rattled the Rothschild fortress. The Austrian wing found itself teetering on a precipice with the annexation of Austria in 1938, with the family coerced into selling their banking operation for mere pence on the pound. The Rothschilds found themselves a hunted clan, with the exception of Louis Rothschild, who, caught in the National Socialists' snare, only secured his freedom after a considerable family-funded ransom. When Louis was finally granted exit in March 1939, the Third Reich set its sights on S.M. von Rothschild, placing it under ruthless administration, their estates plundered by high-ranking Austrian museum officials. The spoils of war left the Austrian Rothschilds with little more than remnants of their once formidable assets. The Second World War's ruthless march claimed France next, the French Rothschilds cast into a storm of uncertainty as their assets were seized in the iron grip of German occupation. Despite their bank being restored in the war's aftermath, the oncoming tide of socialism under President François Mitterrand in 1982 posed a further challenge of insurmountable proportions. The mighty Rothschild behemoth found itself subsumed yet again, this time in the churning waters of nationalization. And then came their monumental lapse, America. The New York Times astutely highlighted the Rothschilds' failure to seize the bountiful opportunity that lay across the Atlantic. Evelyn de Rothschild, with a sense of heavy regret, conceded that in spite of their illustrious lineage in international finance, we never grappled with the American challenge, and that remains one of our family's most glaring missteps. He further lamented that even though the Rothschilds had established a foothold in the US through various investments and alliances, they had never truly broken ground as they had in Europe. This lack of penetration into the American financial landscape marked a profound strategic shortcoming for a family that had so often defined the contours of global finance. Today, the heralded progeny of the Rothschild lineage, a name still entwined in wealth and power, is first embodied by the baronial figure of Jacob Rothschild, the fourth Baron Rothschild, British peer and an ace in the arena of investment banking. His resplendent persona radiates in the sphere of the Rothschild banking dynasty that still stretches across continents and centuries. RIT Capital Partners, a titan of financial trust under his chairmanship, stands tall on the London Stock Exchange with an estimable net asset value in the vicinity of £2 billion. The scales of wealth also still tip in his favour, placing his net worth at an extraordinary $5 billion. On the ladies' side, the noteworthy player in the family is Lady Lynn Forrester de Rothschild, an American-British billionaire entrepreneur with a net worth surpassing the $674 million mark. She rules as the CEO of E.L. Rothschild LLC. The boards of the Estée Lauder companies and the Economist newspaper limited are additionally graced by her presence, as are the International Advisory Council of Asia House, the Council on Foreign Relations in the United States, and Chatham House in the UK. Next, we have James Rothschild, a man whose marital bond with Nicky Hilton extends the influence of the illustrious Rothschild name into the world of fashion and power couples. Born in our lovely capital London in 1985, James boasts an impressive pedigree as the sole son of the late Amschel Rothschild and Anita Patience Guinness. James's journey in finance began with a tenure at the family's N.M. Rothschild & Sons Limited as an investment banker. But currently, James commands the title of founder and managing partner at True Arrow Partners, a firm with a global footprint in the technological growth sector. His net worth stands today at roughly $1.3 billion. The family has also helmed a group of banks managed by Rothschild Continuation Holdings since 2003. With a complex structure of control involving multiple holding companies and the guiding hand of Baron David René de Rothschild, these banks remain a symbol of the Rothschilds' still pervasive influence across Europe. Thus, from the humble origins of Meyer Amschel Rothschild in the heart of Frankfurt's Jewish ghetto, to the myriad tendrils of influence spread by his descendants across continents and centuries, the Rothschild legacy, like a grand symphony, resonates through the ages. Their lineage, sewn into the very fabric of modern history, embodies the most legendary saga of a family with new money, indeed maturing into old money. Picture a fairy tale villa in the Italian countryside, where crystal chandeliers illuminate display cases of the world's finest weapons. Inside, a teenage boy learns his family's ancient craft, not winemaking or fashion design, but the art of forging the perfect weapon barrel. This is life for the latest generation of Berettas, heirs to a $2.5 billion arms empire that has equipped soldiers, kings, and hunters for 5 centuries. While other billionaires build tech empires or fashion dynasties, this remarkable family has maintained their power since 1526 through a single-minded obsession, the pursuit of precision in steel and gunpowder. Thus, in today's episode, we'll step inside their hidden world, where 15 generations have transformed a humble barrel maker's workshop into a global arsenal that has armed every major conflict since the Renaissance, as we describe the Berettas, when your family spends 500 years arming war. In the rarefied air of Italy's billionaire class, few families command the unique combination of historical gravitas and modern influence quite like the Berettas. Indeed, while tech moguls and fashion dynasties grab headlines, the Beretta family quietly oversees a $2.5 billion empire built not on pixels or purses, but on precision-engineered firearms that have armed every major conflict since the Renaissance. From their fairy-tale Tuscan villa in Gardone Val Trompia, the current patriarch Ugo Gusali Beretta and his sons, Pietro and Franco, helm the world's oldest active manufacturing dynasty. Their ancestral home, a magnificent stone mansion built in 1925, doubles as both family residence and showroom for their luxury fashion line. Because when you're a Beretta, even your side ventures exude old-world elegance. Pietro, serving as president and CEO of Beretta Holding, and Franco, as vice president and CEO of the arms factory, represent the 15th generation of this remarkable family. And while most family businesses struggle to survive past the 3rd generation, the Berettas have maintained their grip on power through 5 centuries, with the 16th generation already being groomed in the family traditions. And recent financial statements read like a billionaire's shopping list. Net sales exceeding €1.4 billion, operating results of €286.5 million, and a portfolio of nearly 20 prestigious brands. The acquisition of the legendary British manufacturer Holland & Holland in 2021 only added another jewel to their already glittering crown. Yet unlike many of their fellow billionaires who flaunt their wealth through superyachts and private islands, the Berettas maintain an almost aristocratic discretion. Their true power lies not in ostentatious displays, but in their ubiquitous influence, from the sidearms of law enforcement officers to the hunting rifles of European nobility. From military arsenals to Olympic shooting ranges, the Beretta name is synonymous with precision and power. The family's wealth, while substantial, almost seems modest when compared to their historical impact. After all, how does one quantify the value of a company that has armed every major military conflict since the 1500s? The Berettas have outsurvived empires, outlasted dynasties, and outmaneuvered rivals through nearly half a millennium of turbulent history. But to truly understand how this family transformed from simple barrel makers into arms industry titans, we must journey back to where it all began, in the iron-rich valleys of Renaissance Italy, where a skilled craftsman named Bartolomeo Beretta was about to receive an order that would change his family's destiny forever. In the verdant valleys of Lombardy, where the rushing waters of the Mella River carve through the Alpine foothills, the story of the Beretta dynasty began. The Val Trompia region had long been known for its iron-working tradition, with its natural resources: abundant iron ore, dense forests for charcoal, and powerful rivers to drive machinery, making it an ideal location for metalworking enterprises. Bartolomeo Beretta, born around 1490 in Gardone Val Trompia, grew up immersed in this industrious environment. The region had already established itself as a significant center for firearms production, with numerous small workshops producing weapons for the various Italian city-states and their powerful armies. The constant conflicts between these states created a steady demand for high-quality weapons, particularly the arquebus, a revolutionary firearm that was transforming warfare across Europe. Like many young men in Gardone Val Trompia, Bartolomeo learned the art of metalworking from an early age. The specific circumstances that led him to specialize in barrel making remain lost to history, but his skill in this precise craft would prove transformative, not just for his family, but for the entire field of weapons manufacturing. The pivotal moment in Beretta's history came in 1526, when Bartolomeo received an order from the Arsenal of Venice for 185 arquebus barrels. The Venetian arsenal was the most sophisticated military-industrial complex of its time, with a fearsome reputation for quality standards. The order, worth 296 ducats, was a significant contract that would establish the Beretta name in the competitive world of arms manufacturing. The weapons Bartolomeo crafted were notable for their reliability and craftsmanship. The Mella River's waters, rich in minerals and perfectly suited for tempering metal, helped create barrels of exceptional quality. The Arsenal of Venice's continued patronage spoke volumes about the excellence of Beretta's work, as the Republic of Venice was known for its exacting military standards and its dominance across the Mediterranean. As Bartolomeo's workshop flourished, he began training the next generation in the intricate art of barrel making. His techniques and knowledge would be passed down through the family, creating a foundation of expertise that would prove invaluable in the centuries to come. While many craftsmen of his era produced weapons, Bartolomeo's focus on quality and specialization in barrel making set his workshop apart. By the time of his death between 1565 and 1568, Bartolomeo had established more than just a successful workshop. He had created the beginnings of a dynasty. The skills, reputation, and business connections he cultivated would provide his descendants with the tools they needed to survive and thrive through the tumultuous changes that lay ahead, as Europe entered an age of unprecedented military and technological advancement. As the second half of the 16th century dawned, the Beretta workshop faced new challenges and opportunities in an increasingly complex world of arms manufacturing, where the family's ability to adapt would be tested like never before. Between 1500 and 1700, as gunpowder transformed European warfare from knights and crossbows to muskets and cannons, the Beretta workshop continued to specialize in crafting superior gun barrels. The family's expertise in metallurgy, combined with the Val Trompia region's rich resources, positioned them perfectly to capitalize on the growing demand for firearms. Following Bartolomeo's death in the 1560s, his son Giovannino Beretta, born in 1550, took control of the workshop. Operating during a period of intense military innovation, Giovannino maintained the high standards his father had established while gradually expanding their production capabilities. The workshop's reputation for quality, particularly in barrel making, continued to grow under his stewardship. The Mella River remained crucial to their success, its waters providing both power for the machinery and the perfect mineral composition for tempering metal. The surrounding mountains supplied iron ore of exceptional quality, while the dense forests provided the charcoal necessary for their forges. This combination of natural resources and accumulated expertise made the Val Trompia region, and the Beretta workshop in particular, a center of firearms manufacturing. Records from this period show a steady stream of orders from the Venetian arsenal, indicating that the relationship established by Bartolomeo continued to flourish. The workshop's output gradually increased to meet growing demand, though they maintained their focus on barrel production rather than complete firearms. The 17th century brought significant challenges as warfare evolved and new technologies emerged. The Beretta workshop adapted to these changes by refining their manufacturing techniques, though they remained primarily focused on producing high-quality barrels rather than complete weapons. Their specialty in this crucial component allowed them to maintain their reputation for excellence while avoiding the complexities of full firearm assembly. The family's success during this period stemmed from their ability to maintain consistent quality while slowly expanding their production capacity. Unlike many contemporary workshops that attempted to diversify too quickly, the Berettas understood the value of specialization. Their barrels were sought after by gunsmiths across northern Italy, who would incorporate them into their own weapons. By 1700, the Beretta name had become synonymous with superior barrel craftsmanship throughout the Italian peninsula. The workshop's products were particularly valued for their durability and accuracy, essential qualities as firearms began to play an increasingly dominant role in European warfare. Throughout these 2 centuries, the Berettas maintained their position through a combination of technical expertise and business acumen. Each generation learned the secrets of barrel making from their predecessors, preserving and building upon the knowledge accumulated since Bartolomeo's time. This dedication to their craft would serve them well as Europe entered the 18th century, when the demands of warfare would push firearms technology to new heights. As the 1700s dawned, the family stood ready to face new challenges, though none could have predicted just how dramatically the nature of weapons manufacturing would change in the centuries ahead, as the world stood on the brink of the Industrial Revolution. When Giuseppe Antonio Beretta assumed control of the family business in 1830, the age of artisanal gunsmithing was giving way to industrial-scale production. Born into a rapidly industrializing world, Giuseppe recognized that the family's traditional methods needed to evolve. Under his leadership, Beretta made the pivotal transition from a specialized barrel maker to a manufacturer of complete firearms. This transformation proved perfectly timed. The unification of Italy in 1861 created unprecedented opportunities for arms manufacturers as the newly formed kingdom sought to standardize its military equipment. Giuseppe secured crucial contracts with the Italian military, establishing Beretta as a primary supplier of pistols and rifles to the armed forces. Pietro Beretta, who took over from his father Giuseppe in 1870, accelerated this modernization with remarkable vision. He introduced automated manufacturing processes and expanded the factory's footprint significantly. When World War I erupted in 1915, Beretta was ready. The company's production increased dramatically, reaching over 4,000 Model 1915 pistols per month to supply the Italian army. In the interwar years, Pietro continued expanding Beretta's reach beyond military contracts. The company began producing hunting rifles and sporting guns, establishing a reputation in civilian markets that would prove crucial in leaner times. Their Model 1934 semi-automatic pistol, adopted by the Italian military, would become one of their most successful designs, with over 1 million units produced. World War II brought both opportunity and crisis. While Beretta's factories initially worked at full capacity producing weapons for the Italian military, everything changed in 1943 when German forces took control of the plant. The family's role during this turbulent period remained a complex chapter in their history as they navigated the challenging dynamics of a country torn by war. The post-war era saw Pietro's sons, Pier Giuseppe and Carlo Beretta, assume control in 1957 and steer the company toward international markets. A breakthrough came in 1985 when Beretta won the contract to supply the US military with the M9 pistol, replacing the iconic Colt 1911. This marked the first time the US military had chosen a foreign weapon as its standard-issue sidearm, cementing Beretta's global status. By the end of the 20th century, Beretta had transformed into a modern multinational corporation. Their acquisition of firearms manufacturers like Benelli, Franchi, and Sacco expanded their product range and global reach. While maintaining their historic headquarters in Gardone Val Trompia, they established new manufacturing facilities worldwide, including a state-of-the-art plant in the United States. As the century drew to a close, the company continued to balance tradition with innovation. The family's ability to adapt while maintaining their commitment to quality had served them well through centuries of change. Yet as the new millennium approached, they would face fresh challenges in an increasingly complex global marketplace. With the dawn of the 21st century on the horizon, the Beretta dynasty prepared to confront new technological frontiers and evolving security needs, though the nature of these challenges would prove more complex than anyone could have anticipated. In the current decade, as global defense spending reached historic heights, Beretta Holdings demonstrated its enduring market dominance with consolidated net sales exceeding 1.4 billion euros. Under the leadership of Pietro Gusali Beretta as president and CEO of Beretta Holding SA, the company continues to expand its influence across the global firearms industry, and their product range now extends far beyond traditional firearms. Through subsidiaries like Steiner Optics and Burris, they produce advanced optical systems for military and civilian use. Their clothing and accessories line, sporting the distinctive Trident logo, has become a status symbol among hunting enthusiasts, while their defense division continues to develop tactical equipment for military and law enforcement agencies worldwide. In the American market, Beretta has demonstrated its commitment to modernization by relocating its U.S. manufacturing operations to a state-of-the-art facility in Gallatin, Tennessee. This move, completed in 2016, represented a significant investment in the company's future, providing enhanced production capabilities and improved access to the crucial American market. The company maintains its historic headquarters in Gardone Val Trompia, where the family's legacy began nearly 500 years ago. Here, in the same valley where Bartolomeo Beretta first established his workshop, traditional craftsmanship merges with modern manufacturing techniques. The factory continues to produce high-end sporting arms alongside military and law enforcement weapons, maintaining the quality standards that have defined the Beretta name for centuries. From its origins as a Renaissance workshop to its current status as a global corporation, Beretta's evolution reflects both remarkable continuity and constant adaptation. Thus, as the company approaches its 500th anniversary, it stands as an icon of the enduring value of family leadership combined with technological innovation. In the intricate web of American political history, the phenomenon of presidential families is a perennial topic of both intrigue and, at times, controversy. Placed beside dynastic names like Roosevelt, Kennedy, and Adams, the Bush family carves its unique niche, perhaps more contentious than its predecessors. Indeed, unlike the direct lineage of power seen in other 20th century dynasties, where the Roosevelts and Kennedys, being among America's richest families at the time, played a pivotal role, the Bushes charted a different course. Their ascent from old money to the pinnacle of American politics wasn't a straightforward tale of inheritance or predestined power. Instead, it was a saga marked by astute political maneuvering and an uncanny knack for being at the right place at the right time. In today's episode, we detail how the story of the Bush family is not just about reaching the zenith of political influence, it encapsulates the dual American ethos of entrepreneurship and self-appointed public duty. Their journey, mired in debate and discussion, offers a fascinating insight into the dynamics of power and privilege in the United States. So join us for the ride as we describe how the Bush family went from old money to presidents. Emerging from Europe in the 1600s, the Bush family name weaves through the fabric of history, marking not only a journey of political prominence, but also a richly layered ancestral heritage. This epic tale, steeped in tradition and crossing oceans, echoes the transformative journey of a family that would come to leave an unforgettable mark on American leadership and culture. Now, the Bush family's European lineage primarily encompasses English and German descent. Samuel Bush, born in 1647, marked the beginning of the family's American saga. And extensive research by British genealogist Roger Power has even linked the Bushes to the British royal family. Notably, George H.W. Bush, the 41st President of the United States, is a 13th cousin twice removed of our late Queen Elizabeth II. And this royal connection extends to various historical figures, including King Henry VII, Charles II's mistress, Barbara Villiers, and Mary, the younger sister of Henry VIII. But the Bush family's American journey gained momentum in the mid-19th century. Specifically, among the first Bush ancestors in the USA was George Washington Bush, a mixed-race pioneer and one of the earliest permanent settlers in the Washington Territory. In 1845, he played a crucial role in the early development of what is now Washington State, and that particular George Bush's marriage to Isabella James, of German descent, further diversified the family's heritage. Together they had 9 sons, 6 of whom reached adulthood, and settled at Fort Vancouver, Washington. Then, George Bush's entrepreneurial spirit was evident as he built the region's first grist mill and sawmill, establishing a flourishing farm known as Bush Prairie. And by the late 1800s, the Bush family had begun to amass considerable wealth. Next, Samuel Prescott Bush, a minister's son, was instrumental in establishing the family's fortune. He rose from an apprenticeship to become the president of Buckeye Steel Castings Company, the third largest steel coupler producer in the US at the turn of the century. His tenure at Buckeye Steel Castings, once controlled by Frank Rockefeller, brother of John D. Rockefeller, marked a significant step in the family's ascent to prominence. And Samuel Prescott Bush's influence extended beyond his industrial endeavors. He co-founded the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, presided over the Ohio Manufacturing Association, and served on the board of the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland. Appointed to Herbert Hoover's President's Committee for Unemployment Relief, he forged an even stronger relationship with the Rockefeller family, further cementing the Bush family's status in American history. Therefore, this legacy of wealth accumulation through investment banking and wartime business ventures has been a hallmark of the Bush family. Their business interests have spanned from Halliburton to Merrill Lynch, and they have famously even ventured into Major League sports team ownership. So we've covered their initial immigration to the United States and the seeds of their legendary wealth. However, now it's time to get into the good stuff. How exactly did this admittedly shrewd set of entrepreneurs go from a simple set of moneymakers to a political dynasty that could rival names like Roosevelt, Adams, and Kennedy in importance? To answer that, we must take a journey to the flat, temperate lands of the great state of Ohio in the late 19th century. And there we'll meet a child named Prescott. Prescott Sheldon Bush, born on the 15th of May, 1895 in Columbus, Ohio, emerged from an already formidable brood in the chronicles of American soft power. His parents, Samuel Prescott Bush and Flora Sheldon Bush, provided him with a nurturing environment that fostered an appreciation for education and sports. Indeed, Prescott was one of 5 children, showcasing his athletic prowess at St. George's School in Rhode Island and later at Yale University, where he excelled in baseball and golf, standing an impressive 6 feet 4 inches tall. Then, the outbreak of World War I in 1917 marked a pivotal moment in Prescott Bush's life. As a student at Yale, he embraced his patriotic duty by accepting an officer's commission, serving as a field artillery captain in the Connecticut National Guard. His military experience was diverse, including intelligence training in Verdun and a stint with a team of French officers. The Meuse-Argonne offensive saw him alternating between intelligence and artillery roles, experiences that profoundly shaped his sense of duty and commitment to his country. Post-war life saw Prescott Bush returning to a civilian existence, gradually immersing himself in local politics. At the time, he and his wife began raising what would become a family of 5 children: Prescott Jr., George H.W., more on him later, Jonathan William, or Bucky, and Nancy. And Father Prescott's military service ingrained a deep sense of honor and duty, qualities that later influenced his political ambitions. Furthermore, Prescott Bush's post-military career was marked by a series of strategic moves in the business world. Starting in 1919 with the Simmons Hardware Company in St. Louis, Missouri, he then transitioned to Columbus, Ohio, working for the Hupp Products Company. His journey led him to Massachusetts, where he became the president of sales for Stedman Products. In 1927, a significant career shift occurred when he joined W.A. Harriman and Company, a bank later merged with Brown Brothers. Here, Bush honed his investment management and advisory skills, attracting high-profile clients, including the Harrimans themselves. Controversy, however, was not far from Prescott Bush's storied career. In July 2007, Harper's Magazine published an article by attorney Scott Horton, which highlighted Prescott Bush's alleged involvement in the 1934 business plot. This plan aimed to leverage retired Marine Corps Major General Smedley Butler in a scheme to overthrow President Franklin D. Roosevelt. The plot, however, did not materialize, and Prescott Bush's business dealings extended to his role as a founder and director of the Union Banking Corporation, or the UBC, an investment bank that was a clearinghouse for assets and enterprises held by Fritz Thyssen, a German steel magnate and early Nazi supporter. In 1942, during World War II, the US government seized the bank under the Trading with the Enemy Act, amidst suspicions of holding gold for Nazi leaders. Although these allegations were disproved, Bush's connection with Thyssen and his role in UBC, as reported by some sources, remained a controversial aspect of his legacy. Then, in the 1950s, Prescott Bush, by then already a figure of considerable influence, pivoted towards the political sphere. Aligning himself with the Republican Party, his initial foray into politics faced a setback in 1950, but he secured a seat in the Senate 2 years later. As a senator, Bush was a vocal advocate of President Dwight D. Eisenhower's policies, and he played a notable role in the Interstate Highway Program, where he championed the principle of apportionment based on relative need, a policy adopted in 1956. And beyond infrastructure, Bush was actively engaged in social issues. He contributed to the American Birth Control League as early as 1942 and was instrumental in the first nationwide campaign of Planned Parenthood in 1947. And his commitment to education and racial equality was evident in his role as the chairman of the Connecticut branch of the United Negro College Fund in 1951. However, even as he was gaining immense power in the US Senate, Prescott Bush could perhaps not imagine what the next generation of men bearing his name would do to further the power and prestige of a lineage that had by then already been synonymous with seizing the reins of influence and notoriety. Future President, Vice President, and CIA Director George Herbert Walker Bush, in his adolescent years, attended Phillips Academy, Andover, a prestigious boarding school in Massachusetts. There, he distinguished himself as a compassionate and accomplished student, often standing up for younger students in an environment where bullying was prevalent. His leadership qualities shone through as he became the senior class president and captained both the baseball and soccer teams, while also engaging in various clubs. And his time at Andover culminated on his 18th birthday in 1942, the same day he enlisted in the United States Navy, marking the start of a significant chapter in his life. Then, during World War II, from 1942 to 1945, Bush served as a naval aviator. The attack on Pearl Harbor spurred his decision to join the Navy and train as an aviator. After pre-flight training at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, he earned his commission as an ensign and embarked on 58 combat missions. His military tenure was notable, including a harrowing incident where he had to bail out of his burning plane near the Bonin Islands. And for his valor, he received the Distinguished Flying Cross, 3 Air Medals, and the Presidential Unit Citation, awarded to the USS San Jacinto crew. Next, George H.W. Bush's personal life took a significant turn in 1945 when he married Barbara Pierce. They first met during the Christmas holidays in 1941 at a country club dance in Greenwich. And their engagement, which occurred before George departed for World War II, was sealed with a sapphire ring from his aunt. After surviving his plane being shot down in 1944, George returned to the US on Christmas Eve and married Barbara just 2 weeks later at the First Presbyterian Church in Rye, New York. Their marriage spanned 73 years and saw the birth of 6 children: George Walker, better known as George W., or even just W., Robin, John Ellis, or Jeb, Neil, Marvin, and Dorothy, or Doro. The Bush's union, enduring through various life challenges, became the longest of any presidential couple in history. Now, George H.W. Bush's political journey began in the 1960s and 1970s. His first notable political role was as chairman of Texas's Harris County Republican Party in 1963. He then served 2 terms as a U.S. representative from Texas's 7th District, starting in 1966. Despite setbacks in Senate races, his political ascent continued with appointments to significant roles, including U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. However, his tenure as the Director of Central Intelligence for the CIA in 1976 was mired in controversy. His appointment by the Ford administration during a period of intense scrutiny of the CIA raised concerns among critics like Senator Frank Church about Bush's potential to protect presidential interests. Nevertheless, Bush's time as director was marked by his efforts to boost morale and refocus the agency, earning him recognition as a capable leader. Then, George H.W. Bush's selection as Ronald Reagan's vice president was a strategic decision, balancing Reagan's ticket with a moderate figure like Bush. Reagan, perceived as lacking in foreign affairs expertise, saw value in Bush's extensive experience in the field. However, Bush's selection came at the last moment, influenced by a mix of chance and behind-the-scenes maneuvering. And as vice president, Bush played a key role in domestic areas such as federal deregulation and anti-drug programs, and also represented the U.S. in numerous foreign countries. Despite initial struggles to establish a productive working relationship with President Reagan, Bush eventually won his loyalty, leading to their landslide re-election in 1984. Next, Bush's presidential campaign was multifaceted. With a background in domestic politics and foreign affairs, plus 8 years as vice president, he was well prepared. His campaign, launched in October 1987, focused on continuing Reagan's legacy, with stances against flag burning and abortion and support for free trade and community volunteerism. Despite early setbacks like losing the Iowa caucus and battling an image of being wimpy, Bush rebounded strongly, winning the New Hampshire primary and dominating the Super Tuesday races. The campaign against Democratic nominee Michael Dukakis was aggressive, with the controversial Willie Horton ad and the revolving door spot, painting Dukakis as extremely liberal and soft on crime. These strategies were pivotal in shaping public perception and contributed significantly to Bush's victory. Then, as the 41st President of the United States, Bush's tenure was marked by significant domestic and international events and controversies. He signed the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 and the Clean Air Act amendments, and his reliance on veto power and a challenging relationship with a Democrat-controlled Congress, particularly with Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell, were notable aspects of his presidency. Internationally, Bush's presidency also coincided with the end of the Cold War and the fall of the Berlin Wall. He supported Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev and led the US in the First Gulf War. Although his decision to halt the invasion of Iraq and leave Saddam Hussein in power was contentious. Despite high approval ratings, particularly post-Gulf War, Bush's perceived inattention to domestic issues and breaking the No New Taxes pledge contributed to his defeat in the 1992 presidential election. That year began with his approval rating falling below majority for the first time, further declining amid the presidential primaries. However, little did Father H.W. know that the story of a 2-term Bush presidency was well on its way. It just wouldn't be with Daddy at the helm. George W. Bush was born on the 6th of July, 1946, in New Haven, Connecticut, and his early years were overshadowed by the loss of his sister, Robin, to leukemia, a tragedy that deeply affected him and strengthened his bond with his mother. At Yale University, Bush pursued a history degree, graduating in 1968 amidst a backdrop of controversy. His acceptance into the Texas Air National Guard, especially with a minimal score on a pilot aptitude test and during the height of the Vietnam War, raised eyebrows, with many speculating that his father's political influence as a congressman played a role in this decision. And Bush's early adulthood was famously marked by excessive drinking, which he later acknowledged as problematic, though he never identified as an alcoholic. Reportedly, his drinking habits bordered on binge drinking, occasionally leading to offensive behavior. However, a pivotal change occurred in the 1970s, culminating in his decision to embrace sobriety following a particularly wild celebration of his 40th birthday in 1986. And in 1977, George W. Bush's life took a positive turn with his marriage to Laura Welch, a former teacher and librarian. Shortly thereafter, the couple welcomed twin daughters, Jenna and Barbara, in 1981. Notably, Laura Bush's influence extended to her husband's political career. As First Lady of Texas and then the United States, she championed education, healthcare, and human rights, advocating for the well-intentioned, if controversial, No Child Left Behind Act and the Reading First program. She also founded the National Book Festival and worked with UNESCO on global literacy programs. Now, George W. Bush's political journey began in earnest in 1994 when he ran for governor of Texas against Ann Richards. Despite the intense campaign and high favorability ratings for both candidates, Bush won with 53% of the vote. As governor, he was known for his commitment to bipartisanship and compassionate conservatism, focusing on principles like limited government and personal responsibility. His tenure saw significant achievements, including increased education spending and reforms that linked teacher salaries and promotions to student performance on standardized tests. However, his governorship wasn't without controversy. Bush faced scrutiny for Texas's high use of capital punishment and for education reforms that heavily relied on testing and school report cards. His tort reform measures also sparked debate. Bush's effective governance in Texas led to his re-election in 1998, making him the first governor in Texas history to be elected to consecutive four-year terms. His success in Texas subsequently brought him national attention from the Republican Party, culminating in his nomination as their presidential candidate in 2000. Now, the decision for George W. Bush to run for the presidency in 2000 was deeply rooted in family history and his personal political journey. As the eldest son of former President George H.W. Bush, he had been actively involved in his father's political campaigns, including the 1992 re-election bid. However, the loss of his father in the 1992 election set the stage for George W. Bush to consider his own political aspirations, a decision that solidified during his second inauguration as Texas governor. The 2000 presidential campaign, pitting Texas Governor Bush against Vice President Al Gore, quickly became one of the most disputed in U.S. history. With Gore winning the popular vote, but the electoral outcome hinging on Florida's 25 votes, the nation watched as a slender Bush lead triggered a recount. The Supreme Court's 5-4 decision to halt the recount, citing time constraints to meet the electoral certification deadline, effectively handed the presidency to Bush. This outcome sparked significant controversy, casting doubts on Bush's legitimacy and tarnishing the Supreme Court's reputation. And then, George W. Bush's presidency was a period marked by major events and deep divisions. The 9/11 terrorist attacks, which resulted in nearly 3,000 American deaths, transformed Bush into a wartime president, with his initial response garnering overwhelming public approval. However, his administration's subsequent actions, particularly the invasion of Iraq, attracted intense scrutiny. The Iraq War, justified by the perceived threat from Saddam Hussein, initially had notable support, but later became a point of deep division. The war's human and financial costs, including the loss of over 200,000 Iraqi lives and the displacement of millions, led to widespread criticism. Even Bush himself later acknowledged his administration's errors in his 2010 memoir, Decision Points. And domestically, Bush's policies were equally contentious. His 2001 and 2003 tax cuts significantly reduced federal revenue, while his vision of an ownership society aimed to promote personal responsibility in various aspects of American life. Bush's speaking style, often perceived as folksy or downright pedantic, and the tight structure of his administration, with influential figures like Vice President Dick Cheney and Chief of Staff Andy Card, were distinctive features of his presidency. However, regardless of the sometimes infamous, sometimes glorious nature of George W. Bush's time as president, he without a doubt catapulted the family name to unseen heights. Yet, there were many, many more Bushes at work behind the scenes, bolstering the social power and political muscle of the family at the same time W was in office. With his father and elder brother both serving as US presidents, John Ellis Jeb Bush, born in 1953, had to carve out his own path. After graduating from the University of Texas, he ventured into banking and later real estate development in Florida, and his political ascent culminated in his election as Florida's governor in 1999. Notably, Jeb Bush was a proponent of immigration reform and even sought the Republican presidential nomination in 2016. And though his presidential bid was unsuccessful, Jeb's political endeavors have significantly contributed to the Bush family's legacy, while William Hall Billy Bush, born in 1971, diverged from the family's political trajectory by choosing a career in entertainment. Known for his work on syndicated entertainment news shows, Billy has maintained an apolitical stance, focusing on his individual career in the entertainment industry. This career choice has diversified the Bush family's public image, extending their influence beyond the realm of politics. But both Jeb and Billy have faced their own sets of challenges and controversies. Billy Bush faced a personal scandal a bit later involving Donald Trump and the infamous locker room talk conversation, which drew significant media attention. And Jeb Bush's 2016 presidential campaign struggled to gain traction, leading to his withdrawal after the South Carolina Republican primary. Other members of the Bush family, active in various sectors, include Dorothy Bush Koch and Neil Bush. Dorothy, known as Doro, is an author and philanthropist, contributing to health and wellness initiatives and literacy programs, and Neil Bush is a businessman and chairs several foundations, including those focused on literacy and US-China relations. Furthermore, in the 2010s, the overall Bush family, particularly George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush, experienced notable shifts in public perception. George H.W. Bush, the 41st US president, increasingly came to be regarded as an elder statesman. His foreign policy, in retrospect, garnered appreciation as an exemplar of American leadership, especially when contrasted with the challenges faced by his son and successors. Despite not securing a second presidential term, George H.W. Bush's reputation saw a resurgence, with recognition of his pragmatic and results-driven leadership approach. George W. Bush encountered a more intricate public image during this time. His presidency, marked by significant controversy, often drew criticism for his economic policies, communication skills, foreign policy, and perceived intelligence. However, post-presidency, his public favorability saw an upswing. By 2013, nearly half of Americans viewed him positively, perhaps reflecting his tenure as being less divisive than more recent administrations, marking a considerable improvement from the low approval ratings he experienced upon leaving office in 2009. In his life after the presidency, George W. Bush embraced painting of all things, finding it both relaxing and inspiring. He published Portraits of Courage, a book featuring his paintings that pay tribute to military veterans, showcasing a more personal and calming aspect of the former president. But then, the passing of George H.W. Bush on the 30th of November 2018 profoundly affected the Bush family and their public standing. George H.W. Bush's death also significantly impacted the family's public legacy. He was celebrated for his commitment to his country and his 1,000 Points of Light initiative, inspiring generations of Americans and earning praise from global leaders, and his life and service have left a unique impact on the Bush family and on American public life. Thus, as the 2020s unfold, the Bush family's legacy continues to evolve. Though their political clout appears to be diminishing, their influence has stretched across American politics, media, sports, entertainment, and business for generations. Therefore, indeed, the Bush family's impact on American society and politics remains significant, and their legacy is likely to be a subject of ongoing discussion and analysis in the future. While you've navigated IKEA's maze-like stores and struggled with Allen wrenches in countless living rooms, you've unknowingly participated in perhaps the most sophisticated wealth preservation system ever devised by a Swedish furniture dynasty. Indeed, some magicians make elephants disappear. The Kamprad family made $62 billion vanish from the world's financial radar while building IKEA into a global empire. The furniture giant, founded by Ingvar Kamprad, renowned for transparent pricing and democratic design principles, operates through a corporate structure so deliberately opaque that even financial experts need diagrams to comprehend its complexity. This isn't just another tale of offshore accounts or tax havens. It's a multi-generational lesson in creating perpetual family control while remaining virtually invisible to public scrutiny. In today's episode of Old Money Luxury, we decode why the family that started Ikea, the Kamprad family, hides their $62 billion fortune. The Kamprad family pulled off the financial equivalent of making the Eiffel Tower vanish. $62 billion gone in the blink of an accountant's eye, a disappearing act perfected by a man who'd spent decades concealing his Nazi past. When Ikea founder Ingvar Kamprad died in January 2018 at age 91, financial magazines ranked him alongside tech titans as the 8th richest human alive with $58.7 billion, while obituaries delicately sidestepped his membership in Swedish Nazi organizations during the 1940s. Yet the moment funeral flowers wilted and lawyers opened his will, this fortune had seemingly evaporated. His direct heirs inherited what amounted to designer pocket lint by billionaire standards, a financial vanishing as impressive as his transformation from fascist recruiter to beloved businessman. Kamprad's financial wizardry centered on splitting Ikea into two legally distinct corporate groups by 1982, creating a structure so complex that tax authorities still haven't solved it 40 years later. The Ikea Group, officially Inca Holding BV, owned by the Stichting Inca Foundation in the Netherlands, controls most Ikea retail stores worldwide, those blue and yellow labyrinths where you wander lost before impulse buying scented candles. Meanwhile, the Inter-Ikea Group, controlled by the shadowy Interogo Foundation in Liechtenstein, a micro-country spectacular for hiding money, owns the Ikea concept, trademarks, and franchising rights. This separation created a corporate matryoshka doll where each layer reveals another, but the center, where billions live, remains untouchable by tax authorities, much like how Kamprad's carefully crafted public image concealed his uncomfortable political affiliations. The Inter-Ikea Group collects 3% of all Ikea sales worldwide in royalties, every Pawang chair contributing to cash flowing into tax-optimized coffers, while PR teams ensured customers never connected their furniture purchases with the founder's youthful enthusiasm for fascism. By 2011, this royalty stream had built a cash mountain exceeding 11 billion euros, according to Swedish journalists who exposed how these royalties flowed directly to the Interogo Foundation without troublesome tax deductions. The foundations protecting Kamprad billions aren't typical charity entities. They're specialized legal vehicles designed to preserve wealth while maintaining family control, not unlike how Kamprad controlled his Nazi narrative through strategic philanthropy after his past was exposed. The Stichting Inca Foundation officially exists for charity and supporting innovation in design, but fine print statutes conveniently allow profits to be reinvested in the company instead of funding actual charitable work. When Kamprad departed for the great furniture showroom in the sky, his heirs received the Ikano Group, a mere $10 billion consolation prize representing loose change from an empire built by a man who managed both his wealth and problematic legacy with equal skill. Behind Ikea's affordable prices lies this legacy of concealment, both of incredible wealth and of a founder who, ironically, began his business career in 1943 as an active member of the Swedish Socialist Coalition, while simultaneously selling pens and recruiting for the fascist movement that would later haunt his carefully constructed mythology. Long before concealing billions or Nazi affiliations, Ingvar Kamprad's gift for commerce emerged in the forests of Småland, Sweden, where scarcity bred the resourcefulness that would eventually create the world's largest furniture retailer. Kamprad's entrepreneurial journey began at age 5, when he executed his first business venture by buying matches in bulk from Stockholm and selling them locally for substantial profit, an early glimpse of the commercial instincts that would one day build a global empire while funding fascist activities. This childhood enterprise rapidly expanded to include Christmas ornaments, fish, lingonberries and garden seeds, building business skills that would serve him equally well selling furniture and extremist ideology. Born in 1926 in Älmhult, Sweden, Ingvar grew up with his younger sister Kerstin on his mother's farm, Mytorp, where the extreme thrift he later mythologized as corporate culture stemmed from genuine necessity rather than virtue. The Kamprad family's European roots crossed multiple national boundaries with intriguing political implications. While Ingvar's mother Berta was Swedish, his father Feodor was born in the German Empire and immigrated to Sweden as a child. Ingvar's paternal grandfather, Achim Erdmann Kamprad, came from an aristocratic German family in Thuringia, while his grandmother, Franziska Fanny Glatz, originated from Bohemia in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, creating family connections to regions later consumed by Nazi expansion. Their immigration story began when they spotted an advertisement for a timber estate in a hunting magazine and decided to leave behind rejection from family and economic difficulties in post-industrial Germany. In winter 1896, they purchased a 449-hectare farm near Agunnaryd, Sweden, establishing the Swedish roots of what would become a global dynasty with complex political affiliations. The Kamprad surname itself carried historical significance, dating back to the 14th century as a variant of kamerad, comrade, an ironic etymological connection given Ingvar's later anti-communist, pro-fascist leanings. By the 19th century, the Kamprads had become wealthy estate owners in Thuringia, with Achim Kamprad's mother being a distant relative of Paul von Hindenburg, connections that likely influenced young Ingvar's political sympathies during his formative years. On July 28, 1943, at the remarkably young age of 17, Ingvar Kamprad registered Ikea, an acronym combining his initials with Elmtarid, the family farm, and Agunnaryd, the nearby village. This timing proved particularly significant. While Hitler's armies ravaged Europe and concentration camps operated at full capacity, teenage Ingvar simultaneously built his business and deepened his involvement with Swedish Nazi organizations. His initial business sold imported pens, watches, and nylon stockings, but he expanded to include furniture in 1948, a pivotal decision that would eventually transform both retail history and his public image. Kamprad's early insights about distribution efficiencies emerged when he observed the price difference between wholesale and retail pencils, realizing that streamlining could dramatically lower costs, a philosophy that would later manifest in IKEA's revolutionary flat-pack furniture model. In 1950, Kamprad caused controversy at Stockholm's St. Eriksmassan trade fair by displaying consumer prices clearly on all products, outraging competitors who demanded IKEA's removal for ruining prices and the market. Though banned from future events, he found creative workarounds, demonstrating the same resourcefulness he employed when navigating his increasingly inconvenient political associations as his business gained prominence. While Kamprad's furniture empire grew from modest rural roots into a global phenomenon, one particularly uncomfortable aspect of his biography would eventually emerge that no clever corporate structure could completely conceal: his documented enthusiasm for the same ideology that orchestrated Europe's darkest atrocities. Behind IKEA's cheerful blue and yellow facade lurks a historical shadow the company spent decades trying to minimize: Ingvar Kamprad's documented Nazi sympathies during his youth. In the 1990s, Kamprad publicly admitted to and apologized for his association with Swedish Nazi groups, dismissing these activities as youthful indiscretion and poor judgment. This carefully crafted narrative of a misguided teenager making regrettable choices began to unravel when journalist Elizabeth Asbrink's research revealed deeper, more deliberate connections than initially acknowledged. According to Asbrink's findings, Kamprad was not merely a passive sympathizer, but an active member of the Swedish Socialist Coalition, a pro-Nazi organization that advocated for fascist ideals. Documents uncovered by Asbrink indicated that Sweden's security service had created a special file on Kamprad in 1943, noting that he actively recruited new members for the extremist movement. In a letter intercepted by police, the future IKEA founder stated that he had dedicated considerable time and energy to the cause, hardly the casual association of a politically naive youth. The Nazi influence within the Kamprad household appears to have been significant and normalized, creating an environment where extremist views flourished. In Asbrink's account, Hitler was referred to as Uncle in the Kamprad home, and when Uncle Hitler annexed the Sudetenland, the region from which Ingvar's ancestors came, the family reportedly celebrated this territorial conquest. This political alignment extended well beyond the war years, as Kamprad maintained a friendship with Per Engdahl, founder of a Swedish fascist movement, long after World War II ended. He even invited Engdahl to his wedding in 1950, demonstrating that these connections persisted well into Kamprad's adult life as he was building his furniture empire. Perhaps the most fascinating paradox in this narrative involves Otto Ullmann, an Austrian Jewish refugee who fled Nazi persecution and eventually worked as a servant at the Kamprad family farm in Elmtarid. Despite the stark ideological contradictions, Ullmann and Ingvar became close friends, working, drinking, and pursuing romantic interests together, while Kamprad was actively involved with pro-Nazi organizations. According to Asbrink's research, Ullmann's children later recalled that their father had no knowledge of Kamprad's political affiliations at the time and was deeply angered when these revelations emerged in the 1990s, refusing to forgive his former friend. These uncomfortable historical facts create a striking contrast with IKEA's modern progressive corporate image and values of inclusion and diversity. The company's response to these revelations has evolved over decades, moving from outright denial to carefully worded acknowledgments that attempt to separate the founder's youthful politics from the global brand. Kamprad's first marriage to Kerstin Wadling resulted in the adoption of a daughter, Annika, in 1958, creating the beginning of what would become a powerful business dynasty. After divorcing in 1961, Kamprad married his second wife, Margareta Kamprad Stennert, 1938 to 2011, whom he met when she was just 20 years old. This union produced 3 sons, Peter, Jonas, and Matthias, who would later take on significant roles in the family business and inherit the responsibility of managing their father's complicated legacy. Having survived his Nazi affiliations, becoming public without destroying his company, Kamprad unleashed his next controversial creation, a billionaire persona so aggressively frugal it would make Depression-era grandparents look like champagne-swilling lottery winners. As IKEA expanded globally throughout the 1970s and 80s, Kamprad developed a business persona as colorful and distinctive as the company's furniture catalogs. Despite amassing a fortune that could fund small nations, Kamprad cultivated an image of extreme frugality that became as much a part of his brand as flat-pack furniture. He drove a 1993 Volvo 240 GL for nearly 2 decades, parting with it only when convinced the aging vehicle had become unsafe. Remarkable restraint for a man who could have purchased a fleet of luxury automobiles without noticing the expense. His transportation choices consistently made headlines in financial publications accustomed to profiling billionaires with helicopter collections. Though he owned a car, Kamprad frequently opted for public transportation, once being denied entry to a gala event where he was scheduled to receive a Businessman of the Year award simply because he had arrived by bus. This commitment to modest transportation extended to his air travel, where he insisted on flying economy class despite having billions in the bank. Kamprad's dining habits proved equally bewildering to the wealth management community. Rather than indulging in fine dining during business travels, he frequently opted for meals at IKEA cafeterias, enjoying $4 plates of Swedish meatballs with lingonberry jam and mashed potatoes. Even more peculiarly, he was known to pocket salt and pepper packets from restaurants to take home, behavior typically associated with struggling college students, not global retail titans. At IKEA headquarters, employees reportedly faced reprimands if they didn't use both sides of paper sheets or left lights on when exiting a room, environmental concerns thinly disguising Kamprad's obsession with cost-cutting. In his 1976 document, Testament of a Furniture Dealer, Kamprad outlined his philosophy of avoiding luxury hotels, flashy cars, impressive titles, and other status symbols, emphasizing simplicity as a core value. This carefully cultivated image of extreme thrift came with notable contradictions that rarely made headline news. Despite his public penny-pinching, Kamprad also owned a villa in Switzerland, a large country estate in Sweden, a vineyard in Provence, France, and at one point drove a Porsche. luxury indulgences that complicated his frugal public persona. By the 1970s, despite Ikea's growing success, Kamprad became increasingly concerned about Sweden's high inheritance and wealth taxes. In 1973, Kamprad moved Ikea to Denmark and began implementing a complex multinational structure that would eventually span numerous countries with varying tax regulations. Kamprad's personal struggles included a battle with alcoholism, developed during his early career working with furniture manufacturers in Poland. In a 2004 interview, he acknowledged his struggles with alcohol addiction, claiming to have developed a system to control his drinking, applying the same methodical approach to personal problems that characterized his business strategy. After living in Switzerland from 1976, ostensibly to maintain Ikea's status as a private company, but widely believed to be for tax advantages, Kamprad benefited from Switzerland's lump sum taxation system. Under this system, Kamprad reportedly paid just 200,000 Swiss francs, approximately $215,000, in annual taxes, despite being one of the world's wealthiest individuals. The eccentric billionaire who stole salt packets and flew economy had one final masterpiece to create before his death. Three heirs who inherited control of a $62 billion empire, yet remained so invisible that facial recognition software would struggle to identify the men who collect a percentage every time you buy a Billy bookcase. The three men who control one of Earth's largest retail empires might pass you on the street without triggering a second glance. Exactly how they prefer it. Peter, Jonas, and Matthias Kamprad inherited more than just their father's business acumen. They received his lesson in maintaining astronomical wealth while projecting modest public personas. Unlike the flamboyant billionaire dynasties that plaster their names on buildings and flaunt their fortunes on social media, the Kamprad brothers operate with the stealth of financial ninjas. Their combined influence oversees a retail juggernaut with plans to generate $62 billion in annual revenues, yet most people couldn't pick them out of a lineup. This invisibility represents the ultimate luxury in our attention-hungry era. The freedom to control vast wealth without paparazzi or public scrutiny. Matthias Kamprad, the youngest son, holds perhaps the most powerful position as chairman of Ikea Holding, the entity that controls the IKEA concept and collects those lucrative franchise fees. His brothers Peter and Jonas serve on various boards within the IKEA corporate galaxy, maintaining family control while technically remaining separate from direct ownership. All three brothers co-own the Ikea Group, a diversified business with interests spanning banking, insurance, manufacturing, and real estate. Their more visible inheritance valued at approximately $10 billion. When photographs of the Kamprad brothers do surface, they typically show unassuming middle-aged men in simple clothing, their father's lessons in frugal appearances apparently well learned. Their rare public statements emphasize stewardship rather than ownership, positioning themselves as caretakers of their father's vision rather than conventional billionaire heirs. This carefully cultivated image serves a dual purpose, maintaining the IKEA brand's affordable, democratic ethos while deflecting attention from the family's extraordinary wealth. The true genius of the Kamprad succession plan lies in its perfect alignment with contemporary corporate values. Long before sustainability became a buzzword, Ingvar designed a business structure built to outlast generations. Through foundations, holding companies, and cross-border structures, the Kamprad family created not just a furniture empire, but a financial dynasty designed to survive political upheavals, tax regime changes, and family conflicts. Public Eye, a non-profit organization in Switzerland that promotes corporate responsibility, formally criticized IKEA for its tax avoidance strategies, and in 2007 nominated IKEA for one of its awards, highlighting corporate irresponsibility. IKEA has consistently declined to participate in governmental inquiries about its tax practices, refusing to be auditioned by the Information Commission of the French National Assembly on corporate tax optimization, alongside other multinational giants like Apple and Facebook. What sets the Kamprad approach apart from other wealthy families is the extraordinary foresight and planning invested in creating this structure decades before it would be needed. While many wealthy individuals engage in tax planning and wealth preservation, few have done so with the complexity, thoroughness, and long-term vision of Ingvar Kamprad. The family's unwritten mandate appears to value corporate immortality over individual recognition, a philosophy that emphasizes continuity and legacy above personal wealth. During a rare 1998 interview, Kamprad expressed his belief in maintaining substantial financial reserves for the company's future rather than distributing profits. This extraordinary story raises profound questions about wealth, taxation, and corporate responsibility that extend far beyond flat-pack furniture. While Ikea's affordable products democratize design for millions of consumers worldwide, the company's ownership structure represents one of capitalism's most sophisticated mechanisms for preserving and protecting dynastic wealth. In an era demanding greater corporate transparency, the Kamprad family's ability to maintain control over a $62 billion fortune while remaining largely invisible demonstrates either the ultimate financial sleight of hand or the perfect blueprint for sustainable business, depending entirely on your perspective.